Chapter 1363. Damn it, run. Seeing Chuanjin's ship crash into him, Liu screamed and turned his ship around to run. Unfortunately, not everyone was as alert as Liu. Before he could escape, Chuanjin's ship had already crashed into another ship. Pa! When such a large ship crashed into a small ship, there was no resistance at all. Even the sound made was extremely faint. The Black Dragon Triad's small ship was completely crushed, and everywhere it passed, there were broken planks floating on the surface of the sea. As for the Black Dragon Triad players, since they were already dressed like this, they naturally died along with their ship. Other than a few smarter players who jumped into the sea when Chuanjin's ship was about to crash into them, the other players that were hit by Chuanjin's ship were all crushed in a white light. Damn it, this is too awesome. On the deck, To Place One's Pride saw that the Black Dragon Triad's ship couldn't even withstand a single blow from Wang Yu's ship. He was so excited that snot bubbles came out of his nose. After all, men naturally love to drive, especially this kind of crushing and destructive big guy. To men, it was definitely more attractive than a beautiful woman. The other people in Chuanjin were older and could control themselves. To Place One's Pride, a kid, saw this scene and couldn't help but be excited. As he shouted, he entered the cockpit and grabbed the wheel to manually operate it. Huoliuya's side had just regrouped after escaping Chuanjin's attack and was about to launch a second attack when Chuanjin's ship suddenly turned to the side and made a sharp turn. It was common knowledge that the larger a ship was on the surface of the water, the greater the flow of the water. To Place One's Pride's turn didn't matter, but a circle of waves appeared on the surface of the water. The Black Dragon Triad's formation was once again thrown into chaos. At this time, To Place One's Pride had already turned his ship around and rushed into the Black Dragon Triad's formation. Pa pa pa, sound of cracking rang out, accompanied by white light. The Black Dragon Triad's formation was once again crushed by To Place One's Pride, losing more than half of their ships. Retreat! Retreat! By this point, Huoliuya had already understood that their ships were not on the same level as their opponents. It was impossible to win by relying on numbers. Thus, he hurriedly called for the remaining troops to retreat to shore. But now that Chuanjin's ship had sped up, how could the Black Dragon Guild's human-powered boat outrun the magic-powered aircraft carrier? To Place One's Pride raised the speed of the ship to its maximum and followed behind them. Screams and sounds of destruction filled the air, and the white light blended into the color of the seawater. After crushing everything along the way, the remaining ships of the Black Dragon Triad were completely annihilated. Ingzhou Island, Saga City, Forgotten Sea. Chuanjin took Carl on the giant ship and left, gradually disappearing into the horizon. Not far from the port of Saga City, Chuanjin left a mess after wreaking havoc. The sea was full of broken planks and hulls, as well as Black Dragon Guild players lying on the planks. Huoliuya's heart was bleeding as he watched Chuanjin's solitary sail leave. There was a poem that said that Chuanjin had already kidnapped Carl, leaving only Huoliuya. Chuanjin was gone, and Liuya's heart was bleeding again. Ugh, that was a bit too much, but it was not an exaggeration to say that Huoliuya's heart was bleeding. Carl had the Saga City Lord's seal in his hand. Players and NPCs were different. After a player obtained the seal, they could directly take up the position. In this way, the meaning of Carl being kidnapped was equivalent to the position of Saga City Lord no longer belonging to the Black Dragon Triad. In fact, Saga City was the most remote city in Ingzhou Island. It was not very valuable, and it only had the advantage of a port. Ingzhou Island was an isolated island. As long as the Black Dragon Triad and the other 5 cities were still there, even if this city was taken by others, it would not be difficult to take it back. Huoliuya was not someone who could not afford to lose. The reason why his heart was bleeding was mainly because Chuanjin had destroyed his fleet. There was no need to elaborate on how important ships were to a port city. The key was that there was no shipbuilding technology in the game. The ships of the Black Dragon Guild's fleet were all hand-built by the guild's players after countless failures. In this era of swords and magic, production was so low that it was hard to imagine how much effort it took to build a ship. The Black Dragon Gang had spent all of their resources to build a fleet. Because Saga City was a port city, they let Huo Liuya use it as a facade. But now, they were completely destroyed. Huo Liuya's current mood was absolutely King Dog. He had destroyed the fleet, but he had still failed to snatch Carl back. Huo Liuya's head was about to explode. He had to rebuild the fleet or snatch the seal back. Otherwise, he would not be able to explain himself to Huo Liuya. He might even lose his job. Boss, are we still going after them? At this moment, a player with a mustache poked his head over and asked. This mustache player was Huo Liuya's confidant, Huo Lai. Just from his name, one could tell that he had a special relationship with Huo Liuya. Huo Liuya's plan to surround Chuanjin had been devised by Huo Lai. It could be said that he was Huo Liuya's most trusted advisor. Chase. Huo Liuya looked at Huo Lai and replied in a bad mood. Chase my ass. Are we swimming after them? But if you don't get the seal back from Carl, we'll both be finished. Huo Lai was a smart person. He knew Huo Liuya's current situation. With their relationship, if Huo Liuya lost his job, Huo wouldn't have a good time. How am I supposed to know? Huo Liuya said gloomily. If I had a way, I wouldn't be so depressed. How about we look for someone? Huo Liuya suggested after thinking for a moment. Look for someone? Huo Liuya frowned. Who? The problem is that we don't have a ship. We can't go to Hero's Continent. That's easy, Huo Lai said. We'll look for Hero's Continent's people. Once we're done, we'll have them mail us the seal. Will that work? Huo Liuya's eyes glowed. However, he still felt that this plan wasn't very reliable. Although Immortal Abode Islands players were weaker than Hero's Continent's players, Huo Liuya was still a leader. It wasn't hard for him to tell that Chuanjin's people weren't ordinary experts. No problem, Huo Lai said. I know a few experts on the forums who specialize in this sort of business. Their asking price is a bit high, but it's better than losing our jobs. If you agree, I'll go offline and send them an email. This, Huo Liuya rubbed his chin in thought. Huo Liuya was a very conceited person. If he had a plan, he wouldn't ask others for help. However, he had no other choice. Chapter 1364. While Huo Liuya and the others were struggling on the sea, Chuanjin's group had already left Immortal Abode Islands territory. The weather on the sea was as clear as ever. Chuanjin's ship sailed smoothly on the endless sea, drifting with the wind. On the deck, the Chuanjin members were basking in the sun and looking at the sea. They were in a good mood. To place one's pride, he was full of smiles. He seemed to be immersed in the excitement of crushing his opponents. Wang Yu squatted beside Carl with a frown. He held a short sword in his hand and poked Carl, who was lying on the deck. He asked Wuji, "Is this bastard dead?" "I'm not sure." Wuji took out his staff and waved it twice. Seeing that Carl did not move, Wuji rubbed his chin and said, "It's all your fault. Why are you trying to act cool? Anyone would die if they were thrown from such a high place." TCH. Wang Yu curled his lips and said, "I flew from Evil Spirit Valley to the sea. It's already good enough that I could fly there with one person. Who cares how he landed? What do you think we should do if he died?" "He won't die," Wuji said confidently. "For a wild boss like this, there won't be a corpse if he dies. You probably knocked him out." "Knocked him out." Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu called out to Mingdu, who was acting cool with Yang Na, and said, "Old Li, come here for a moment." "What?" Mingdu turned his head and asked impatiently. Clearly, being interrupted while flirting with girls was a very unpleasant thing. Wang Yu pointed at Carl on the ground and said, "Pour some water on his face. It's cold." Wang Yu did not know whether this would work or not. In any case, it was what was shown on TV. Mingdu was quite dissatisfied with Wang Yu using him as a tool in front of girl. But what could he do? He could not fight back. He could only throw a water ball at Carl's face. Splash. The ice ball landed on Carl's face, but he still did not move. "So it looks like he's really dead." Seeing this, Wang Yu sighed and said, "Forget it. Throw him into the sea." As he spoke, Wang Yu lifted Carl with one hand and was about to throw him into the sea. After all, he was once the lord of a city and was a respectable person. They couldn't let him die without a burial place, right? A sea burial was quite suitable for Carl's identity. But at this moment, Wuji suddenly pulled Wang Yu back and said, Don't throw it. What's wrong? Wang Yu was puzzled. They're already dead. Why aren't you throwing them away? Don't worry. Wu Ji smiled and said, take off his clothes first. F***CK. Wang Yu was horrified. Are you going to F***CK me again? She really couldn't tell that Wu Ji had such a refined appearance. In any case, he was a cultured person with quite a unique taste. However, considering all of his previous misdeeds, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. I'm not interested in men. Wu Ji waved his hand and said, this guy is still a boss. His clothes should be good. No matter how small a fly is, it's still meat. Wang Yu thought for a moment and said, what you said makes sense. After saying that, Wang Yu threw Carl on the ground and reached out to take off his clothes. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Carl, who was already like a dead person, suddenly opened his eyes, rolled backward, and jumped up. F***CK. What the hell? Carl's sudden rise gave Wang Yu a shock. He thought that he'd come back to life, so he raised his hand and slapped him. Seeing Wang Yu attack him, Carl retreated and shouted in panic, Don't. I'm not playing anymore. I'm alive. Alive. Hearing Carl shout, Wang Yu's heart shook. He hurriedly retracted his hand and forcefully stopped his palm in front of Carl. The fierce palm wind blew on Carl's face, scaring him so much that his face turned pale. This kid didn't know that he had taken a trip to the gates of hell. Pretending to be dead until he was really dead? That would be too much. Oof. At the side, Wu Ji was not surprised at all when he saw this scene. Instead, he coldly snorted and said, I knew you were playing tricks. Wang Yu was quite angry at Carl's behavior. He asked with a cold face, if you're alive, then you're alive. Why lie? Hee. Carl chuckled and said slyly, I'm just playing. Don't take it so seriously. I didn't say that I was dead. You're the ones who insisted on thinking so. Who the hell is playing with you? Hearing Carl's defense, Wu Ji couldn't help but smack his staff on Carl's waist. For some reason, Wu Ji was very unhappy when he saw this NPC. However, Wang Yu saw Wu Ji's shadow in this NPC. It seemed that the saying that people hated themselves the most was credible. Ha! Carl laughed and said, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. You actually rescued me. Let's go. Let's return to Harbor City. When we return, I'll definitely reward you well. Hee. Hearing Carl's words, Wang Yu smiled faintly and then asked, I didn't save you to listen to your nonsense. Please tell me where the Harbor City Lord Seal is. Meow. The traps in this game are really everywhere. Carl's words just now were obviously changing the concept. After all, Wang Yu is now the system's certified Harbor City Lord, and he was only one seal away from being the official Harbor City Lord. On the other hand, Carl held the Harbor City Lord's seal in his hand and was only one title away. If Wang Yu had casually agreed to Carl's words just now, then it was obvious that he had fallen into Carl's trap. Think about it. If Wang Yu, as the Harbor City Lord, recognized someone else as the Harbor City Lord, wouldn't that be giving up Harbor City? Perhaps the Harbor City Lord would be replaced by Carl on the spot. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Wang Yu had suffered in the hands of NPCs so many times and was considered a veteran. He had long been trained to be extremely vigilant. When encountering ordinary NPCs, Wang Yu would be careful, not to mention Carl, the damn liar who almost deceived him just now. Sure enough, seeing that Wang Yu was not fooled, Carl showed a disappointed expression on his face. Then he rolled his eyes and replied, The seal? I've hidden it. When we return to Harbor City, I'll tell you where I hid it. There's no need to go to Harbor City. Wu Ji continued, I know it's hidden on you. Take it out quickly. Hearing Wu Ji's words, Carl was stunned and looked at Wu Ji with a pale face. Why do you say that? Wu Ji stared at Carl and sneered, then said word by word, Because you're a person who never trusts others. With how vicious Wu Ji's eyes were, he could see through Carl a glance. In Wu Ji's eyes, a stray dog like Carl would not easily trust others. He would not be at ease if he did not carry something as valuable as the Harbor City Lord Seal with him. Chapter 1365. Otherwise, this fellow wouldn't have pretended to be dead as soon as he boarded the ship in an attempt to get Wang Yu to throw him into the sea. After being exposed, he still wanted to trick Wang Yu. If he didn't have the seal on him, there would be no point in tricking Wang Yu. Huh? Carl laughed when he heard Wu Ji's explanation. At the same time, he slowly took 2 steps back to the side of the ship. He then said proudly, "You're very smart. No wonder you had the ability to fish me out of the dungeon. But do you think you can catch me on the sea?" With that, Carl leaned back and jumped off the ship. As the castellan of 2 port cities, Carl didn't have any other abilities, but he was undoubtedly good at swimming. To the people on the ship who couldn't swim, letting Carl jump into the water was like letting a tiger return to the mountain and a dragon return to the sea. It wouldn't be so easy to catch him again. Seeing Carl jump off the ship, Wang Yu was slightly stunned. He didn't wait for Carl to fall into the water and was about to chase after him, but he was stopped by Wu Ji. "Don't worry, he can't get away." Splash. As he spoke, Carl had already jumped into the sea. After giving Wang Yu and the others on the deck the middle finger, he dived into the water. To place one's pride, said anxiously, "Damn, he's going to run away." However, just as to place one's pride finished speaking, the sea suddenly surged and a giant pincer grabbed Carl out of the water. Following that, Blackbeard surfaced. "Hee hee, where do you think you're going?" Blackbeard let out a weird laugh and jumped onto the boat with Carl in tow. He loosened his grip, and Carl fell heavily to the ground, making him dizzy. Carl rolled a few times on the deck before coming to his senses. He looked at the cruel Blackbeard and the Chuanjian people in horror, his face filled with indescribable astonishment. Carl and Blackbeard were both familiar with the sea. He never would have thought that the famous Blackbeard of the Forgotten Ocean would actually collude with players to attack him. "Oomph." Wu Ji laughed coldly. "Have you given up this time? Why aren't you handing over the seal?" Hee hee. Carl didn't want to be outdone. He said shamelessly, "What if I don't give it to you? If you have the ability to kill me, then don't even think about getting the City Lord seal." He could not tell that this Carl was a ruthless character despite his sloppy abilities. What he feared the most in Jianghu was this kind of dogskin plaster that could not be moved by force or persuasion. He relied on the fact that others did not dare to do anything to him and was a pain in the neck. Of course, Carl was unlucky today to bump into Chuanjian's group. Chuanjian's group was extremely experienced in dealing with troublemakers. After all, Chuanjian's group was the same as Carl's. How did the saying go again? Only a more shameless person could deal with a shameless person. Facing Carl's threat, everyone in Chuanjian laughed. Wang Yu pointed at Blackbeard and ordered, "Capture him." Although Blackbeard wasn't Wang Yu's subordinate, he would never forget how he was reduced to a player's follower. How would he dare to go against Wang Yu's words? So he walked to Carl's side and grabbed him tightly in his hands. At this moment, without waiting for Wang Yu to speak, Mingji and Daoxue walked out from the crowd. He walked to Carl's side and casually patted Carl's chest. Being touched by Mingji and Daoxue, Carl's body quivered. A green helmet appeared in Mingji and Daoxue's hands. "Oh, Yamatai Chief's helmet. Gold equipment. The color is quite unique. Bao San is giving you. It suits you." Mingji and Daoxue looked at the helmet in his hands and threw it to Bao San. Scram! Bao San angrily knocked the helmet to the ground. When Carl saw the helmet in Mingji and Daoxue's hands, his face turned green. He struggled and shouted, "Let me go. You can't do this to me." However, Blackbeard was a strength-type boss. He was much stronger than trash like Carl. No matter how Carl struggled, he couldn't break free. Mingji and Daoxue ignored Carl's shouts and continued to search Carl's body. The people from Chuanjian crossed their arms and watched from the side. It had to be said that Carl had been a city lord before. He had quite a lot of goods on him. In just a short while, Mingji and Daoxue had dug out a pile of hidden goods. There was a second-hand leather jacket worn by City Lord Akujin, a pair of shoes worn by the City Lord of Rising Cloud City, and the underwear of Yamatai Queen. TSK. Seeing these hidden goods, the people of Chuanjian were greatly enlightened. With the Chuanjian people's imagination, they could already come up with an epic novel that was not inferior to Jinping Mei. As the items on him decreased, Carl's expression became more and more awful. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and loudly begged for mercy. "Sirs, I know I was wrong. I admit defeat. Can't you let me go? I'll hand the seal, To you myself. Mingji and Dao Xue took the opportunity to gulp down a bottle of recovery potion. Then, he turned his head and asked Wang Yu and Wu Ji. He wants to hand it over himself. Are you still going to steal it? Ignore him, Wu Ji said decisively. This bastard is full of evil tricks. We can't give him any chance. Continue searching. All right. Mingji and Dao Xue turned his head and continued searching. After who knew how many times, his hand suddenly sank. A square-shaped seal appeared in Mingji and Dao Xue's hand. Seeing that Mingji and Dao Xue had taken out the seal, Carl revealed a look of despair. F***CK. I finally found it. Mingji and Dao Xue heaved a long sigh of relief when he saw the seal. Then, he threw the seal to Wang Yu. Wu Ji was just about to ask Blackbeard to put Carl down when Wang Yu frowned and said, "That's not right. What's wrong? Is it fake?" Everyone from Chuanjin was shocked when they heard that. No, this is not the Harbor City Lord's seal, Wang Yu said as he displayed the seal's attributes. Castellan seal, Saga City valuable item. The holder of this seal can obtain Saga City. F***CK. Seeing the seal's attributes, everyone exclaimed, This is actually the Saga City Lord's seal. Everyone was just looking for the Harbor City Lord's seal. They didn't expect to get an unexpected reward. No wonder Black Dragon was so desperate. It turned out that Carl did not only have the Harbor City Lord's seal in his hand. This old fellow had been swindling people for so many years and still had some results. Now, he even found the Saga City Lord's seal. Who knew what else he could find? Continue searching. Thinking of this, Wu Ji pointed at Carl excitedly and ordered Mingji and Dao Xue. Mingji and Dao Xue also continued to search with great enthusiasm. It turned out that the probability of a pie falling from the sky was extremely small. It was even less likely for it to happen twice in a row. A group of people from Chuanjin surrounded Carl. Mingji and Dao Xue did not know how many times he had searched until Carl was only left with his underwear. In the end, other than the Harbor City and Saga City Lord seals, he did not find the seals of other main cities. Chapter 1366. After nameless sword Dao Xue stripped Carl naked, Blackbeard threw him on the ground again. The two Castellan seals were Carl's last hope for survival. As long as he had the two seals, Carl had a chance to make a comeback. After meeting Chuanjin, he returned to his former self in one night. At this time, Carl's eyes were lifeless, as if he had nothing left to live for. He climbed up and was about to jump off the ship. Stop him! Wu Ji waved his hand, and Blackbeard picked Carl up again. Carl calmly looked at Wu Ji and said resentfully, "Where are the seals? I have nothing now. Are you still not letting me go?" Hee hee. Wu Ji waved his hand and said, "The seals are not important to us." Then, do you think I have something more important on me? Carl looked confused. Yes. Wu Ji nodded and said, "No, you are very important to us." Then, Wu Ji gave Mingdu a look. Mingdu raised his staff and a thick thunderbolt fell from the sky and landed on Carl's head. Carl was not a powerful NPC. How could he withstand Mingdu's attack? Kutcha! Carl was turned into ashes by Mingdu's thunderbolt. Aya, why did you kill him? Seeing Wu Ji instructing Mingdu to kill Carl, Wang Yu could not bear to do it. Although the other party was an NPC, he still had a life. Old cow, Wu Ji sighed and said, "You are now the Castellan of two main cities. You are a feudal lord. Your identity is completely different from before. Don't be as naive as before. As mentioned before, one should not meddle in politics if one is not in a position. The previous Wang Yu was just a normal player. No matter how famous he was at most a player who knew how to play. The barefooted did not fear those who wore shoes. Ordinary players would not dare to provoke an expert like Wang Yu, who was a member of a small guild. Large guilds always acted from the perspective of profit. Naturally, they would not go through the trouble of targeting a small group. After all, tormenting them would also cost money. It was obviously not worth it to deal with a small group of people. Moreover, the Chuanjin group was a group of ruthless people. There would be no glory in beating them. If they couldn't beat them, wouldn't it be even more shameful? Now, Wang Yu was no longer a new player. He had two main cities under his name, It should be noted that there were very few major guilds that had control over a major city. Even the largest guild, reigning the world, did not have a major city under their name. To large guilds that were filled with ambition and determined to dominate the world, a main city was a juicy piece of meat. Who wouldn't want a piece of the pie? Even if Chuanjin's current name could suppress Yu Huiqing's big guild, what about in the future? The update speed of the players in the game was much faster than the update speed of the game. In a few months, no one would remember the horror of Wang Yu. Even if Wang Yu could suppress Yu Huiqing's guild, what about the other main cities? With such a great temptation, there would eventually be a guild that couldn't resist. Carl was the former city lord of Harbor City. If he could get the seals of Saga City and Harbor City, he would definitely be able to get the seals of other main cities. If one day his city was robbed by other guilds, wouldn't it be setting up a strong enemy for Wang Yu? Although Wang Yu didn't have the intention to harm others, there were too many people who had the intention to harm others. Wu Ji understood Wang Yu's temper quite well. As a strategist with a more far-reaching thinking, of course, he had to be clean and neat at this moment, not leaving behind any future troubles. Wang Yu's heart was pure and kind, but he was also a person with a clear mind. The meaning of Wu Ji's words was naturally understood by Wang Yu. He also knew that Wu Ji was doing it for his own good, so of course, he wouldn't take his good intentions as malicious intentions. I understand. Wang Yu nodded. It's good that you understand. Wu Ji casually threw the Harbor City seal to Wang Yu and said, "Hurry up and take up the position." Wang Yu and Wu Ji didn't need to be polite. They received the seal and used it. System notification. You have used the Harbor City Lord seal and have officially taken over Harbor City. System notification. The Harbor City Lord has officially taken office. The sea route from Harbor City in the Heroes Continent to Saga City in Ingzhou Island is open. As the Harbor City Lord, reputation plus asterisk asterisk asterisk, honor plus asterisk asterisk asterisk, experience plus asterisk 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 asterisk. After a series of notifications, the system also sent an announcement. System announcement. The sea route from the Heroes Continent to Ingzhou Island, which had been abandoned for many years, has finally been opened under the unremitting efforts of Harbor City Lord Iron Ox. The Heroes Continent and Ingzhou Island can finally trade. Lord Iron Ox has made outstanding contributions to the prosperity of the continent. His glorious deeds will forever be recorded in history. The announcement was sent 3 times, and it resounded throughout the entire game. Wang Yu also deeply felt the shamelessness of game designers. Meow. Wang Yu originally thought that as long as he became the Harbor City Lord, the sea route could be used. It turned out that his mission this time was to open this route. What was the difference between this and buying car parts and assembling them at home? Just as Wang Yu was feeling depressed, Wu Ji suddenly reminded him, "You haven't used the Saga City Lord seal yet, right?" Wang Yu said, "I've used it. I can't use it anymore. The system notified me that my level is too low, and I can only have 2 main cities under my name." Wu Ji was speechless, thinking that this kid was quite fast. Thank God for the system restriction, or else he would have gotten the seal for nothing. "I can use it." Hearing Wang Yu's words, Mingdu said shamelessly, "With my ability, it's not too much to be the Lord, right? Get lost." Wu Ji kicked Mingdu away. "Do you know how to speak Japanese? You're the lord of someone else. Shameless." Mingdu was silent. "I know how to." Bao San's face was full of desire. Bullsh asterisk T. Wu Ji rolled his eyes. "How can I look after a city when my wife has been stolen?" Bao San was furious. "I have a wife." Chun Xiang was eager to try. Wu Ji despised him. "What's the use of having a wife? You only have 50 yuan a month, and you still want to build a main city?" Chun Xiang was speechless. "I don't have a wife." To place one's pride, raised his hand. He. Wu Ji sneered. "A man who hasn't experienced women is not smart enough to govern the world." "Damn." To place one's pride, said angrily, "Why don't we beat up that old dog Wu Ji?" "I agree." Everyone nodded their heads in unison and pushed Wu Ji to the ground. In fact, the reason why Wu Ji didn't agree with everyone using the Lord Seal was that Xuanzhen was not a big guild with tens of thousands of people, and the number of players was too small to control a large territory. The reason why Wang Yu was able to monopolize two main cities was because the harbor city was originally an empty city. Chapter 1367. It seemed that Xuanzhen's people couldn't use it for the time being. As for selling it, they had to find a reliable buyer. Otherwise, they would be looking for trouble. Guilds that could afford a main city seal weren't easy to deal with. If they really wanted to target Wang Yu's seaport city, Wang Yu wasn't strong enough to fight 10,000 people by himself. Even if Wang Yu was strong enough to fight an entire army by himself, it would still be troublesome. They weren't afraid of thieves stealing, but they were afraid of thieves remembering. Big guilds had a lot of people and money. They could quickly recover from a war. With the income of Xuanzhen's people, no matter how much money they had, it would only be a waste. As a result, Saga City's seal was temporarily left with Wang Yu. The flight route was now open, and Xuanzhen safely returned to Seaport City. Throughout the day, no one was idle. They fought pirates and went overseas. By the time they returned to Seaport City, it was already nighttime. Wang Yu's work and rest habits were quite regular. As usual, after returning to the city, Wang Yu went offline. Xuanzhen's people returned to Yuhuicheng. Apart from dungeon activities, Xuanzhen's people usually didn't play together. When they returned to Yuhuicheng, everyone disbanded and went on their own activities. Bao, Sanchun Xiang, and the others were combat classes. Whether it was leveling or doing quests, they could do it alone. Wuji was different. He was a cleric. Although his skills were high, his damage output was limited. He had to find someone to carry him when leveling. Now that no one was carrying Wuji could only wander the streets with nothing to do. Wuji was already used to this kind of life. After all, Wuji didn't care about dirty work. Because of this, Wuji could spare some time to think about things that others didn't have to think about. Saga City, Black Dragon Guild's office. Huoyuya was having a headache about the seal. Suddenly, Toothcrack pushed open the door and said, "Boss, I'm back." Oh. Seeing Huoya return, Huoya hurriedly sat up straight and asked, "How did it go?" "Don't mention it." Fire Toothcrack sighed. "Do you know who was the one who snatched him today?" "Who?" Huoya's heart shook when he heard that. As the leader of a large guild, the saddest thing wasn't having his quest NPC stolen. Rather, he didn't even know who it was that had stolen his quest. Huoya had been cooped up in his office writing the battle report. As he did not know the identity of his opponent, he was so troubled that his hair was about to fall off. Now that he heard that his subordinate had found out the identity of his opponent, he felt a little better. "It's the Quanjun sect," Fire Toothcrack said solemnly. Huoya Lai's side was incomparably solemn, but Huoluya had a blank look on his face as he said, "Xuanzhen? What was that? Is it very powerful?" "It's more than amazing." Fire Toothcrack said, "It's really amazing. They were the champion team of the Chinese server last season. An expert among experts." "Professional league? Champion?" Hearing Fire Toothcrack's words, Huoluya was stunned. Neon's esports industry was relatively weak. Compared to the national server, the value of the experts was generally lower. There was not even a decent esports team. Professional experts were a legendary existence to Neon players. Although China's esports matured later, China had a large population and a large number of experts. Their professional experts were ranked in the top 3 in the world. As for the Chinese server's esports championship, that was something that they could only dream of. Thinking about how powerful their opponent was, Huoluya was shocked. After a long time, Huoluya muttered, "No wonder they were so hard to deal with. They were actually the champion team of professional experts." Yeah, Fire Toothcrack was also shocked. Following that, Huoluya said, "Losing to them isn't an injustice. It could be said that as a boss, the thickness of their skin was the same. With so many people being wiped out by a single team, it wasn't an injustice." "Yes." Fire Toothcrack nodded and said, "That's why the Chinese server's asking price is higher." "Asking price? What price?" Huoluya was puzzled. Fire Toothcrack was dumbfounded. "Didn't you ask me to find people to steal the seal? I forgot so quickly. They're already on their way." I didn't forget about that, Hualuya said. But our opponent is the strongest team in China. How can the people you found be stronger than them? You don't understand. Fire Toothcrack said. Stealing things and the strength of a team are two different things. This is a professional team. Professional team? Hualuya rubbed his chin. How much? 500,000 gold. Fire Toothcrack raised 5 fingers. Puffed. Hualuya spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn, it's just a seal. Are you trying to kill us? The asking price is really high. Japan's prices were much more stable than China's server. The purchasing power of gold was also much higher. 500,000 gold was worth a few million in China's server. In Japan, it would only be more. There's no other way. Fire Toothcrack said helplessly. Both sides are top-tier experts. In their words, this price is already very reasonable. Fire Toothcrack's words weren't wrong. 2 teams had more than 20 players. Spending a few million to hire 2 teams of top-tier experts for an exhibition match wasn't much. But Hualuya still shook his head. There's no point in spending so much money. It's better to just tell the headquarters. If they know who our opponent is, they'll let us off the hook. That's true, Fire Toothcrack said. But don't you think that spending this little bit of money will make China's strongest team suffer a loss? That'll make us look better. When Fire Toothcrack said this, Hualuya immediately hesitated. According to accounting, losing the seal was considered a loss, and they could just report the loss. Then, getting the seal back was considered a contribution. Doubling GDP. Hualuya's evaluation of Saga City was based on his contributions. If he reported the loss now, Hualuya hoped that he wouldn't be blamed. If he got the seal back, and it was from the hands of Chuanjin's experts, how big of a contribution would that be? One had to know that the Quanzhun sect was the strongest team in Huaxia. Everyone knew about the relationship between Huaxia and Neon. If they could trample on the strongest team in Huaxia, their achievements would rise to the level of a nation-state. Chapter 1368. Yu Huiqing's scenery hadn't changed much since the server was launched. Wuji wasn't too interested in it. He only wandered around the city to see if there were any new NPCs and accept quests. After all, the game had just been updated. Hidden NPCs and hidden quests had yet to be discovered by players. In this update, there were quite a few new NPCs in Afterglow City. However, most of them were NPCs with special abilities. Quests couldn't be obtained from these NPCs. Only the inaccessible corners of the city were the best places to find hidden quests and NPCs. Little did they know that while Wuji was wandering around the city, a group of players appeared in Yu Huiqing's teleportation point. This group of players wore leather armor and had daggers at their waists. It was a strange sight. Everyone knew that the only class that used daggers in Rebirth was the assassin. Although assassins were strong in PvP, it was rare to see a group of only assassins like this. After all, Rebirth was a game that was very particular about the combination of classes. It was easy to make mistakes with a class's composition, not to mention such an extreme composition. The leader of this group of assassins had his face covered, so his appearance couldn't be seen. In Rebirth, assassins had a special type of equipment on their head called a mask. Therefore, it was common for assassins to have their faces covered. However, although the appearance of the assassin in black could not be seen, the assassin in black had a voluptuous figure. It was obvious that she was a woman. After appearing in Yu Huiqing's teleportation point, the female assassin looked around cautiously, then asked her teammates with a serious expression, "I'm sure everyone knows who our opponents are this time." We know. The assassins were excited. Good. The female assassin nodded and said, "For us, this isn't just a quest. It's also a challenge. It's the foundation of our fame. I want to explain how strong these people are, but everyone must be careful. Don't get caught up in the fight. If you can't beat them, run. Understood? Understood. Follow the original plan." After saying that, the group activated stealth and disappeared from the resurrection point. At the same time, Wuji also came to a small alley. However, as soon as he walked into the alley, he felt something was wrong. At this time, a figure ran towards Wuji from the other end of the alley. The figure was about 2 meters tall and looked like a 7 or 8-year-old child. In Rebirth, it was forbidden to log into the game before the age of 12, so Wuji did not suspect the identity of the figure. He thought it was an NPC, and his heart was filled with joy as he hurriedly welcomed the figure. Who knew that when the kid ran to the front of Wuji, without saying a word, he took out a dagger and stabbed at Wuji's face. Holy shit! Wuji was able to be the boss of this group of madmen in Xuanzhen. Although his reaction was not as fast as Wang Yu's, he was still extremely sharp. Seeing that the child took out a dagger, Wuji was shocked. He hurriedly put a holy light spell on his head and activated the invincibility state before the dagger could stab him. Clang! The dagger stabbed Wuji and made a soft sound. Although Wuji was not injured, he was pushed back a few steps by the powerful force. System notification. You have been maliciously attacked by player Southern Sky Giant God. You can defend yourself in 180 seconds. At this time, Wuji also saw the true appearance of the figure. The kid's body was surprisingly the face of a middle-aged man. Damn it, who gave him the courage to call himself Southern Sky Giant God when he looks like this? Southern Sky Giant God? Seeing the name, Wuji suddenly felt that it sounded familiar. After thinking for a moment, he pointed at the Southern Sky Giant God in surprise and said, "You're from the King Assassin Association." Hee hee. The Southern Sky Giant God chuckled and wiped his dagger. He said in surprise, "I didn't expect the third-generation leader of Xuanzhen, Mr. Wuji, to know about our King Assassin Association." Hee hee. Wuji laughed coldly. "Of course I've heard of our notorious reputation. It's not like we have a good reputation." After playing the game for so many years, Wuji knew about anyone with a bit of reputation. Besides, the King Assassin Association was not a nameless organization. Just like Xuanzhen, the King Assassin Association was also a notorious organization. Everyone was no stranger to the Quanzhen sect style of doing things. They would resort to all sorts of methods to swindle, cheat, and steal. However, their methods were built on the basis of playing games for fun. They fought with those forces that they didn't like. Although their methods were vicious, there were still many unaffiliated players who admired the Quanzhen sect style. The King Assassin Association was different. They were also made up of a group of expert players. From the name of the association, it was not hard to tell that they were a group that did things for money. As long as they were paid enough, they would do anything dirty and shameless. They had always been looked down upon by the players. Back in the day, there was a wuxia game called The Legend of Ancient Heroes. It was divided into two factions, Gold and Ancient. The two strange organizations, Xuanzhen and the King Assassin Association, respectively represented the bottom line of the two factions. These two organizations became famous in that game, and they were known as the Northern Xuanzhen and the Southern King Assassin. However, Xuanzhen focused on techniques when it came to battles of wits, while the King Assassin Association focused on violence when it came to robbing. Due to the difference in ideology, the two organizations had always looked down on each other when it came to techniques. Therefore, they had not crossed paths for many years and minded their own business. Everyone had been living in harmony. Now that Wuji was suddenly attacked by the King Assassin Association, it was beyond Wuji's expectation. The Southern Sky Giant God was not angry after being mocked by Wuji. Instead, he smiled and said, "Same to you. Xuanzhen shouldn't be too humble either." It seemed like in the Southern Sky Giant God's eyes, Xuanzhen and the King Assassin Association were jackals of the same tribe. "Cut the crap," Wuji said coldly. "Why would your King Assassin Association stay in your own territory? Why would you come to you, Huichan, to look for me?" The Southern Sky Giant God squinted and stared at Wuji. "Everyone says that Patriarch Wuji is smarter than most people. Don't tell me you don't know what we're trying to do when you've encountered the King Assassin Association." "You?" Wuji glanced at the Southern Sky Giant God with a disdainful expression. There were only two reasons why the King Assassin Association would come looking for someone, either to rob or to kill. The Southern Sky Giant God was only a small fry of the King Assassin Association, while Wuji was the boss of Xuanzhen. Their statuses were not on the same level, So Wuji was extremely disdainful of the Southern Sky Giant God's arrogance. "Humph," the Southern Sky Giant God said with a cold laugh. "In the past, someone of my level wouldn't dare to come looking for you. But now, Patriarch Wuji, don't forget that you're only a priest. Die." Following this, the sacred light shield on Wuji's body gradually dissipated. The Southern Sky Giant God lunged at Wuji with his dagger. Chapter 1369. A cleric was a long-range support class, thus Wuji was not good at melee combat. However, Wuji was still an expert, and he had learned a thing or two from Wang Yu after spending so much time with him. Seeing the South Heaven Giant God lunging at him, Wuji raised the staff in his right hand in front of his chest. Thud! Following a dull thud, the South Heaven Giant God's dagger was blocked by Wuji. In terms of strength, a cleric was no match against the South Heaven Giant God. Even though he had managed to block the attack, Wuji was knocked a few steps back by the powerful impact. The South Heaven Giant God was fairly agile. He immediately activated quickness after missing his attack and chased after Wuji. He instantly arrived before Wuji and stabbed at him with his dagger. Meanwhile, Wuji took the opportunity to raise his left hand above his head. A red glow shone down as he activated the second stage invincibility to defend himself from the South Heaven Giant God's attack. "See ya." Wuji smiled faintly and tapped his staff on the ground. He jumped up and used a flight spell. His whole body immediately soared into the air and flew towards the roof. The South Heaven Giant God was extremely short, thus he immediately realized his disadvantage. Wuji had only risen 2 meters into the air. An ordinary person could easily drag Wuji down with a raise of their hand. On the other hand, even if the South Heaven Giant God managed to jump into the air, there was still some distance between him and Wuji. He could only watch as Wuji flew into the sky. "I knew you would run away." However, as Wuji was about to escape, he suddenly heard a loud roar from above. A voluptuous figure descended from the sky and stomped at Wuji. Wuji was still feeling proud of himself. He was completely unaware that there was an enemy above him. When he collected his thoughts, the figure was already right in front of him. Wuji subconsciously twisted his body to dodge the attack. Although the figure missed its target, it ended up sitting on Wuji's face instead. Bang! Wuji was now in an invincible state, so he didn't suffer any substantial damage from the blow. However, his face sank, and he suddenly felt a trace of softness. Then, the black shadow sat him back on the ground. However, because he stepped on nothing, the man also lost his balance and lay on Wuji. Ouch! Wuji, who was smashed to the ground, hurriedly raised his hands, wanting to push the person on top of him away. However, when he clenched his hands, he seemed to have grabbed onto something soft. Pervert! At the same time, he heard a woman scream. Before Wuji could react, a woman's voice rang out. Papa! A series of slaps landed on Wuji's face. That girl was fast and ruthless. Not only did Wuji not dodge the 3 slaps, he was also stunned for 0.8 seconds. Damn it! An assassin had managed to stun someone with her bare hands. It was obvious how furious the girl was. It did make sense. Apart from Wuji, no one would feel comfortable after suffering such a huge loss. After slapping Wuji, the girl rolled backward and rose to her feet. She pointed at Wuji on the ground angrily and said to the South Heaven Giant God, beat him to death." The South Heaven Giant God was dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with envy. After receiving the order, the South Heaven Giant God wiped the saliva from his mouth and jumped to his feet. He raised his dagger and stabbed Wuji from top to bottom. At the same time, a line of words lit up above the South Heaven Giant God's head. Awakening, God vanquishing, assassination. Damn it. It was hard to tell if the dwarf was angry at Wuji for messing with him, or jealous that Wuji was able to have intimate contact with the girl, but he did not hold back at all. He even used the awakening skill. Wuji was not an expert in melee combat. Thus, he was unable to block the awakening skill of an assassin. As such, Wuji, who was lying on the ground, quickly moved to the side. The South Heaven giant god's dagger grazed past Wuji's shoulder and stabbed into the ground. Before the South Heaven giant god could turn around, Wuji rolled to the side and hugged the South Heaven giant god with his arms. Following this, a blinding glow burst out from Wuji's body. It's self-destruction. The eyes of the South Heaven giant god and the girl widened when they saw the white glow on Wuji's body. They were both astounded by Wuji's pure style. It cannot be helped. A priest only had one powerful skill. Even Wuji did not think he stood a chance against an assassin. Now that an even stronger opponent had shown up, there was no way Wuji would think he could return alive. The people of Chuanjin might have different personalities, but they all had one thing in common. They were always ruthless when dealing with things. These assholes never suffered any losses. If I can't survive, I won't let you live either. I'll drag someone down with me to minimize my losses. When the South Heaven giant god sensed the danger, Wuji had already unleashed his skill. It was too late for him to break free. Boom! With a loud explosion, Wuji's health bar dropped to the bottom. The South Heaven giant god was blasted into a white light. After killing the South Heaven giant god, Wuji flipped backward and cast a few healing spells on his head to forcefully restore his health to 30%. He then took a few steps back to distance himself from the girl. The girl had no intention of chasing after Wuji when she saw him backing away. She crossed her arms and said, "The leader of the Chuanjin cult, Mr. Wuji Z, is only SOSO. How dare you use such a despicable method to injure someone?" Wuji was not angry at the girl's sarcasm. Instead, he replied in the same tone, "The leader of the King Assassins Association, Miss Wu Z, is only SOSO. How dare you use such a despicable method to injure someone?" Saying this, Wuji touched his face and glanced at the girl's butt. He shook his head and clicked his tongue. Whoosh! Wu Hinzi's expression darkened when she heard Wuji's words. She raised her dagger and snapped, "Asshole! Shut up! Do you believe that I will kill you?" "Hee, just you?" Wuji waved his staff and tossed a holy flame at Wu Hinzi. He then spread his hands and spread the wings on his back. He soared into the sky again. Wu Hinzi was shocked and quickly ran toward him. After Wuji killed the South Heaven giant god, he immediately distanced himself from Wu Hinzi. Now that Wu Hinzi was silenced by Wuji, she could not use any of her skills. When she reached where Wuji was standing, Wuji was already in the air. The King Assassins Association was similar to the Chuanjin cult. They were both a group of experts. Wu Hinzi must be quite capable to be the leader of such a group. Seeing that Wuji was about to fly away again, Wu Hinzi swung his right hand. A rope shot up into the sky and tied onto Wuji's leg. "Come down." Immediately after, Wu Hin pulled down fiercely. Wuji's body swayed, and he fell to the ground for the second time. After the previous battle, Wu Hinzi could tell that she was no match for Wuji in a quarrel. Besides, the people of the Chuanjin cult were indeed as mad as the rumors said. They would bite back at the slightest mistake. Chapter 1370. Wuji wasn't good at close combat, but he wasn't the type to just sit and wait for death. Facing Wu Hinzi's dagger, Wuji swung his staff horizontally, knocking the dagger to the side. Then, he raised the other end of his staff. Seeing Wuji's staff technique, Wu Hinzi was slightly taken aback. She hurriedly retreated and said in astonishment, "Chain blockade? Who are you?" That's right. Wuji had learned this staff technique from Wang Yu, of course. Chain blockade was a technique used to block and counterattack. Not only was its defensive power strong, but its offensive power wasn't weak either. Wuji was self-taught, and he had barely knocked the dagger away. If it had been Wang Yu, this staff might have been able to take Wu Hinzi's life. However, Wuji was able to learn it just by watching Wang Yu use it. This talent could be considered very high. Seeing Wu Hinzi's expression and hearing the name of this move, Wuji knew that Wu Hinzi was probably similar to Wang Yu. So, Wuji swung his staff and adopted a stance that Wang Yu often used to provoke her. "Are you afraid? Do you know the Wang family?" "Wang family? Wu Hengzi sized up Wu Ji and immediately sneered. So you are from the Wang family. Not bad. I heard that the Wang family is having a lot of fun in the game. This old lady wanted to meet you. I didn't expect you to be from the Wang family. Hearing Wu Hengzi's words, Wu Ji's heart turned cold. He originally thought that with the Wang family status in the Kung Fu circle, he would be able to scare off his opponent by mentioning their name. Who would have thought that this girl in front of him would be so fierce? Could it be that this resentful woman was also one of Wang Yu's fiancées? What the F***CK? What the hell was going on? Little did they know that although Wang Yu was an honest child, and the Wangs were also considered to be the leading figures in the martial arts circle, it was not difficult to see from the way evildoers run wild-handled things that the Wangs were still very tough, especially Wang Yu's previous generation and the generation before that. All of them were scoundrels who relied on their fists to reason with others. Even though Wang Yu was a reasonable guy, he still went around challenging people at such a young age. Anyone who kept a low profile wouldn't be able to do something like this. Because of this, in the martial arts circle, the Wang family's level of respect was far from matching their status. Compared to the other three families, it was even worse. If Wu Ji pretended to be a member of the Yang family or the Li family, Wu Hengzi would have given him face and told him scram. But pretending to be a member of the Wang family, wasn't that just asking for a beating? Ha ha ha. Goodbye. Wu Ji laughed and cupped his hands at Wu Hengzi. He turned around and wanted to escape, but as an assassin, Wu Hengzi's speed was far faster than Wu Ji's. In a flash, he had caught up to Wu Ji's back. Wu Ji turned around and swung his staff at Wu Hengzi. Wu Hengzi calmly lowered his head and dodged it. At the same time, he reached out and grabbed Wu Ji's wrist. With a jerk, Wu Ji's arm was pulled to his back. Before Wu Ji could struggle, Wu Hengzi stabbed Wu Ji's wrist with a dagger in his other hand. Poochie. Wu Ji's wrist was pierced by the dagger. Wu Ji reflexively let go, and the staff fell to the ground. Wu Hengzi let go of Wu Ji's hand and kicked Wu Ji far away. Then he grabbed the staff on the ground. Wu Ji's staff jumped straight into Wu Hengzi's hand. Wu Hengzi looked at Wu Ji's staff's attributes and said, I didn't expect the Wang family to have such a good equipment. When Wu Ji heard this, he turned his head abruptly. When he saw the magic staff in Wu Hengzi's hand, his face turned pale. A player's most important asset was their equipment, and weapons were definitely the most important equipment for a player, second to none. Although Wu Ji's staff was not a godly equipment, it was still a good item. Moreover, it had been with Wu Ji for a long time. Wu Ji had long since gotten used to it. Now that it had been snatched away so easily, one could only imagine how angry Wu Ji was. Wu Ji had no lack of experience in stealing equipment from others. He didn't expect to be pecked in the eye by a bird and be robbed one day. However, Wu Ji was aware of this. Unlike the others, he didn't scream for the equipment to be returned. Instead, he calmly turned around, stared at Wu Hengzi, and said, Speak. What do you want? Wu Ji knew how powerful martial artists were. With Wu Hengzi's abilities, defeating him wouldn't be difficult. Judging from Wu Hengzi's current performance, he didn't come all the way here just to steal a piece of equipment. Now that someone from the Assassin Kings Association had appeared, there must be something else. What do I want? Wu Hengzi casually stuffed Wu Ji's staff into his pocket. Then he smiled and said, The Assassin Kings Association has always been on par with Chuanjin. However, your Chuanjin has been in the limelight recently. You clearly don't care about us. Huh. When Wu Ji heard this, he said calmly, Just because of such a small matter, the Assassin King offended our Quanjin sect. I believe President Wu Hin knows the consequences. Indeed, there were two students who were about the same level. Suddenly, one of them became the top student in the country. It was impossible for the other student to not feel anything. However, Wu Ji understood the Assassin Kings Association quite well. After all, Chuanjin and the Assassin Kings Association had similar personalities. They were more pragmatic. Things like reputation were like floating clouds to them. Otherwise, the two guilds wouldn't have crossed paths for so long. Just because of this small matter, provoking Chuanjin wasn't a wise move. Of course not. Wu Hengzi smiled, then stared at Wu Ji and said, Is the Saga City seal in Xuanzhen's hands. Saga City Seal. Wuji was shocked. He frowned and said, "How do you know?" The Assassin Kings Association was famous for robbing people. Naturally, Wu Henzi wouldn't hide anything from Wuji. He said calmly, "I took someone's money to eliminate a disaster. Tell me, how do I know?" "So that's how it is." Wuji nodded and said, "Your Assassin Kings Association really dares to earn any kind of money. But to tell you the truth, the seal was taken by Xuanzhen, but it isn't with me." "TSK," Wu Henzi said disdainfully. "Don't lie to me just because I'm a woman. You are the leader of Xuanzhen. If the seal isn't with you, who is? Did you sell it? It doesn't matter. You can give me the money. I'm not picky." "What a greedy woman." Wuji sighed and smiled. "The seal isn't for sale, but I advise you not to find out who has it. I'm doing this for your own good. Look at your curves. That bastard definitely won't be merciful just because you're a woman. Don't bullshit with me." Wu Henzi said angrily, "If you dare to talk nonsense, I will destroy your staff now." With that, Wu Henzi took out Wuji's staff and was about to destroy it. Don't. Wuji saw this and panicked. "The two of us had contact beyond friendship. Don't be so heartless." Ignoring Wuji's nonsense, Wu Henzi said fiercely, "Tell me, who has the seal?" Chapter 1371. Wuji could be the boss of those bastards in Xuanzhen. This guy was born with the talent to do evil. Don't look at how Wuji sold out Wang Yu. This was essentially different from selling out a teammate. Selling out someone else was the same as selling out a teammate. Selling out Wang Yu was definitely a trap. After all, the art of war said that letting the strong fight the weak was like driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. As for letting Wu Hensi fight Wang Yu, it was obviously driving the dog to swallow the tiger. Seeing that Wuji sold out his teammate so easily, Wu Hensi was a little suspicious. He frowned and asked, "You're not lying to me, right?" "I won't," Wuji said solemnly. "I swear on my character that I will never lie." Wasn't that so? In Wuji's eyes, lying was the lowest level of deception. It didn't suit his style. Using the truth to deceive his opponent was the highest level. Thus, even though Wuji had cheated countless people, he had never lied. "How much is your character worth?" Wu Hensi rolled his eyes at Wuji and said, "I've heard a little about what kind of person you are. Even if you're telling the truth, I can't believe it. I'll take the staff first. When I see the city's seal, I'll get it back to you." "Hee." Wuji smiled indifferently and said, "Seeing that we had intimate contact just now, I still have to remind you. You'd better return the staff to me now and obediently go home. The seal isn't as easy to get as you think." Whoosh. Before Wuji's voice fell, Wu Hensi raised his hand. The rope in his hand had a sharp blade. It flew past Wuji's head and deeply inserted into the wall. Wuji was startled by this. At this time, Wu Hensi coldly stared at Wuji and said, "I didn't kill you not because I didn't want to, but because no one is willing to pay for your dog life. If you dare to mention this again, even if no one is willing to pay for your head, I will still kill you." After saying that, Wu Hensi shouted at the air, "Let's go." At the same time, the air in the alley twisted, and a dozen black-clothed assassins appeared around Wuji out of thin air. They then followed behind Wu Hensi. "TSK, who are you trying to scare?" Wuji curled his lips, then looked at his hands, his face showing a wretched smile. Although Wuji snorted disdainfully at Wu Hensi's threat, he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat as he watched the Assassin King's departing figure. Damn it, the Assassin King was as famous as the Quanjin sect. Sure enough, the Assassin King was quite capable. He actually managed to surround Wuji unknowingly. The members of the Quanjin sect were all in the same boat. As the guild leader, Wuji naturally had to warn the others when he encountered such a thing. Hence, Wuji opened the guild channel and roughly recounted what happened just now. Hiss! Hearing Wuji's words, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Those bastards of the Assassin King must be tired of living. They dare to provoke you. Everyone knew that there were two people in Xuanzhen that couldn't be provoked. One was Wang Yu, and the other was Wuji. Wang Yu was Xuanzhen's strength. In the words of the Yu Huicheng players, Yu Huicheng's Iron Ox could easily take on 100, and it was normal for him to take on 1,000. Even if he faced an army of thousands, he could still take the head of the enemy general as easily as taking something out of his pocket. What was more terrifying was that he had a younger brother. His subordinates were all over the game. They were invincible in one-on-one fights and invincible in group fights. If they provoked Wang Yu, even a guild with tens of thousands of players would have to be prepared to deal with them. As for Wu Ji, he wasn't very strong, but he was extremely sinister. In the past, he brought a few people to destroy China's #1 guild, the Three Evils Manor. Later on, he brought Yu Huicheng players to trample over millions of players. Such a record was a milestone in the gaming circle. More importantly, Wu Ji was a Super B** starred with all the negative connotations. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge, but a villain would take revenge from morning till night. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, at least he had a gentle personality and was forthright. He was loved by the Yu Huicheng players. If they provoked Wang Yu, they would at most die a few times. They would be safe as long as they admitted defeat. Wu Ji, on the other hand, was insatiably greedy. If they provoked him, it would be a never-ending nightmare. He could even pinch a toad to make powder out of it. If you don't believe me, look at the Three Evils Manor, and then look at the fish in the water. They died peacefully. Because of this, Yu Huicheng had a saying that he would rather offend Wang Yu than Wu Ji. This B** starred would usually take the initiative to find trouble to relieve his boredom. Moreover, he was blocked in an alley and robbed of his weapon. Wasn't assassinating the king, asking for death. I know, Wu Ji said helplessly. These B** stars are bullying me because I'm a defenseless cleric. Third Bao was indeed Wu Ji's brother. Although he wasn't as arrogant as evildoers run wild, when he heard that his brother had suffered a loss, he immediately shouted, "Do you want us to go back and snatch your weapon back?" "Nonsense," Wu Ji said. "My weapon is in the hands of that B** sh traceless. She'll destroy it if she's angry." Snatching back one's own things was different from snatching someone else's. Snatching someone else's things would benefit one in any case. Even if the item was destroyed, there was no loss to oneself. However, to snatch back one's own things, one had to be more careful. In this kind of situation, without absolute strength, even if one could defeat the opponent, it was very likely that they would lose everything. Without Wang Yu, Chuanjin's strength was on par with the King's Assassin Association. If they really went back to hunt down the King's Assassin Association, Traceless might do something extreme. She was a woman, after all. When it was time to be rational, they would never know what rationality was. This was something that Wu Ji was very experienced in. Then what are you going to do now? Just admit it? Ming Du, and to place one's pride, also interrupted. The King's Assassin Association was a small group that was on par with Chuanjin. Anyone who had experience with being on par would know that even if they were smiling on the surface, they would still want to compare who was better. Who was Wu Ji? He was the leader of Chuanjin. The people of Chuanjin could be disrespected, but others could not be bullied. If they hit him, wouldn't that be the same as slapping Chuanjin in the face? In the past, Chuanjin and the King's Assassin Association did not interfere with each other's business. Everyone was in harmony. Now that the King's Assassin Association had come to their doorstep, Chuanjin naturally could not sit still. "It's fine," Wu Ji said calmly. "My weapon is not that easy to snatch. They will regret it tomorrow." "Oh, what did you do?" "Hee," Wu Ji said. "I betrayed Old Cow to them. They will definitely surround Old Cow tomorrow." Chapter 1372. Wu Ji's plan was very good, but the Assassin King's Union and his men were not fools. There were quite a few expert groups in the gaming circle, but only the King's Association could compare to Chuanjin. It was not hard to see that the King's Association was not as simple as just being strong. No matter what, the people from the King's Association were experts. Although they had not watched the competition, Wang Yu was currently in the limelight. He could be said to be the #1 player in the national server. It was impossible for the King's Association not to have heard of him, and they naturally would not let their guard down. after finding out that the seal was in Wang Yu's hands. The people of the Assassin's King Association made thorough preparations and thoroughly investigated the background of Wang Yu and the Chuanjin sect. After all, the people from Chuanjin were not low-profile people, and Wang Yu did not deliberately hide it. It should be known that Wang Yu was a famous person in Yuhuicheng, and it was not difficult to find information about him. In just one night, the King's Association even knew what Wang Yu's wife looked like. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. This was a necessary quality for every expert team. As a professional gamer, the game was work. The next morning, Wang Yu went online before 8, as if he was going to work. The moment he went online, Wang Yu received a message from Wuji. Be careful when you go out. Someone might be waiting for you. When he saw Wuji's message, Wang Yu only smiled and closed the chat window. He did not take it to heart. Don't ask me why. If you were a fierce person who could pull 8 horses and push 9 bulls, and someone told you not to leave after school, would you take it to heart? This was the confidence of us experts. People who had not been experts before might not have this awareness. As usual, the first thing Wang Yu did after going online was to sweep through the daily dungeon. Yesterday, Wang Yu went offline at Harbor City, and the first thing he did after going online was to return to Yuhuicheng to wait for Chuanjin's people to come online. But when Wang Yu walked near the teleportation circle, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of Wang Yu. That person was none other than Mu Zixian. She was standing in the teleportation circle, looking around as if she was waiting for someone. Seeing Mu Zixian here, Wang Yu was not surprised. Harbor City was going to be a trading city in the future. With such a prime location, they naturally wouldn't let the goodies flow to outsiders. After Wang Yu went offline last night, she mentioned to Mu Zixian that she wanted to open a bigger branch here for her. Mu Zixian's business was booming right now, and she was complaining that the shop was too small. Wang Yu had undoubtedly given Mu Zixian a big gift, so the two of them had agreed to come to Harbor City to take a look after going online today. The only thing that surprised Wang Yu was that Mu Zixian had actually teleported over so early. Usually, at this time, Mu Zixian would still be at home doing housework. Of course, there were not many doubts between an old couple. Everyone knew that Wang Yu was a man who loved his wife dearly. Seeing Mu Zixian appear in the teleportation circle, Wang Yu did not hesitate. He quickly went forward and put his arm around Mu Zixian's shoulder and said, "Wife, why are you online so early? You should rest a little more." Being forcefully embraced by Wang Yu and hearing Wang Yu call her that, Mu Zixian was stunned at first. Then, her face turned slightly red, and she said uncomfortably, I'm in a hurry." Wang Yu was not a carefree person, but he did not care about trifles. Regarding Mu Zixian's different behavior, Wang Yu also felt a little strange. But she was a woman, and there would always be a few days a month when she was different from usual. Wang Yu did not care too much about it. He waved his hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry. I have plenty of time. Let's go. I'll bring you around the new city." As he spoke, Wang Yu pulled Mu Zixian's hand and was about to walk into the city. Mu Zixian shook off Wang Yu's hand and asked doubtfully, "This city, is it really yours?" "Of course." Don't look at how mature Wang Yu was usually. In front of Mu Zixian, he was like a child. He pointed at Harbor City and proudly mimicked the characters in the TV series, saying, "This is the country that I have conquered for you." Tisk. Mu Zixian curled her lips in disdain. Seeing Mu Zixian's expression, Wang Yu thought that his wife found it too little. So he pretended to be pretentious and said, "I won't hide it from you. I still have a main city seal, but I can't use it now. Otherwise, I will be the city lord of 3 main cities." "Is that so?" Mu Zixian squinted her eyes and said suspiciously, "Let me see. Why do you feel so weird today?" Seeing Mu Zixian speak to him in a strange tone, Wang Yu scratched the back of his head in confusion. Mu Zixian quickly said, "Don't change the topic. You aren't bragging to me, right? Am I that kind of person?" Wang Yu casually took out Saga City's seal and threw it to Mu Zixian. "Oh," Mu Zixian took the seal and looked at its attributes. She nodded her head in satisfaction and suddenly pointed behind Wang Yu with her left hand. She asked in surprise, "What is that?" When Wang Yu heard this, he quickly turned his head and looked behind him. At this moment, Mu Zixian flipped her hand and kept the seal. Then, she quickly took a few steps back and stepped into the teleportation array. Wang Yu was still wondering what Mu Zixian saw when he heard a female voice laugh behind him. "Huh, hubby, do I look like your wife?" Wang Yu suddenly turned his head and saw Mu Zixian in the teleportation array wiping her face with her hand, instantly revealing a different appearance. That person had an oval face, bright and beautiful teeth, and was extremely beautiful. Her figure was curvy and unforgettable. If it wasn't Wu Hengzi, who else could it be? "Who are you?" After knowing that he had been tricked, Wang Yu was shocked and angry. He clapped his left hand, and a white light swept towards Wu Hengzi. However, Wu Hengzi had already activated the teleportation array, turned into a light, and disappeared in front of Wang Yu. Without another word, Wang Yu shot forward and followed Wu Hengzi into the teleportation array. Although Wang Yu had killed countless people, as a martial arts master, Wang Yu's temperament was transcendent. Nothing in the world could affect his state of mind. Only Mu Zixian was Wang Yu's only weakness. Although Wang Yu knew that the person who swindled away the seal wasn't Mu Zixian, Wu Hengzi's act of pretending to be Mu Zixian to trick Wang Yu had already touched Wang Yu's bottom line. As a result, Wang Yu, who had never lost his temper before, was suddenly enraged. With a flash of white light, Wang Yu was teleported to Yu Huicheng. However, Yu Huicheng wasn't Seaport City. Seaport City was currently an empty city. Apart from Wang Yu and Wu Hengzi, there were no other players. However, ever since Xuanzhen became the champion of the professional league in Yu Huicheng, there were more and more players of the teleportation array. Before anyone could catch a glimpse of Wu Hengzi, he had already disappeared into the vast sea of people. At this time, Wu Ji was already online. The first thing he did after going online was to happily send a message to Wang Yu. "Old cow, did you take care of those idiots?" Chapter 1373. What? After receiving Wang Yu's message, Wu Ji's heart skipped a beat, and he broke out in a cold sweat. Damn it. Wu Ji had originally planned to get someone else to do his dirty work. Now, things had gone out of hand, it could not be helped. Not only Wu Ji, but everyone in Xuanzhen had a superstitious belief in Wang Yu's strength. In their hearts, there was no one, including bosses, that Wang Yu could not kill. Even Wu Ji didn't think that such an awesome existence like Wang Yu would actually have a moment where he stumbled and his seal was snatched away by someone else. "What's going on?" After being shocked for a moment, Wu Ji asked in surprise. Wu Ji had fought with players from the Assassin's Guild yesterday. Their strength was just SOSO. After playing with Wang Yu for so long, Wu Ji naturally knew Wang Yu's strength. How could that group of useless chickens and tiles have the ability to snatch the Castellan's seal from Wang Yu's hands? Could it be that there was another expert among them? Damn it, a woman disguised as my wife and tricked me into leaving. Wang Yu angrily recounted what happened. As for Traceless pretending to be his wife, Wang Yu was quite angry. He even cursed. What? After hearing Wang Yu's account, Wu Ji was speechless. Then, he said in disdain, "You can't tell other people apart, but you can't tell your own wife apart." "Nonsense," Wang Yu said gloomily. "How would I know that this stupid game has so many messy skills?" Wang Yu's answer made Wu Ji speechless. Thinking about it, Wu Ji was a veteran MMORPG, and no matter how good Wang Yu was, he was still a newbie who had been online for less than a year. The two of them definitely had different ways of thinking. Although Wang Yu was no longer a newbie when it came to online games, he could not integrate into the game world as he pleased like Wu Ji. He did not have a high level of awareness as a player. Therefore, Wang Yu would definitely not deliberately guard against strange things like disguise. Furthermore, Wu Hengzi was impersonating Mu Zixian. His own wife was standing in front of him, so no matter how strange her behavior was, Wang Yu did not dare to doubt her authenticity. What a joke. "Sai, you still have to be careful," Wu Ji lamented. His words were full of sorrow for her misfortune. "That's not important," Wang Yu said. "What's important is who these people are." "This," Wu Ji said honestly, "the person who lied to you is called Wu Hengzi. He's the leader of the Assassin's Guild. He's very strong. Wu Henzi, Assassin's Guild? Wang Yu looked dumbfounded. What's that? A small group similar to Chu Anjin. Wu Ji explained, it's just that their guild is full of assassins. They specialize in doing despicable things. All of them are assassins. Is it a thief company? Wang Yu's description was very appropriate. Wu Ji was stunned for a moment. In the words of our gaming circle, it's called the Thieves' Guild. I don't care what guild they are, Wang Yu said unhappily. I just want to know why they would look for me when I have no enmity with these people. How do you know that she lied to me? See, as long as it wasn't in front of Mu Zixin, Wang Yu was still very sharp. When Wang Yu said this, Wu Ji's hair stood up. He quickly wiped his sweat and said, this is not important. The important thing is that we have to quickly find the seal. Find my ass, Wang Yu said gloomily. I saw her teleport to Yu Huichang, but then she disappeared. There are only a dozen of us in such a big Yu Huichang. How long will it take to find it? Yu Huichang had a resident population of at least hundreds of thousands. A dozen of them searching for a few assassins was no easier than finding a needle in a haystack. Are you sure Wu Henzi is in Yu Huichang now? Wu Ji asked. That girl didn't directly teleport to another main city in Yu Huichang, did she? Impossible, Wang Yu said. I sealed the city the moment I saw her teleport. She can only be in Yu Huichang City right now. As the Lord of Yu Huichang City, Wang Yu had the authority to close all passages into Yu Huichang City. Wang Yu reacted quickly. The city's teleport channel could only be used by Yu Huichang City, so when Wu Henzi escaped, Wang Yu immediately closed all the teleport channels and city gates in Yu Huichang City. If the assassins wanted to leave Yu Huichang City, they would have to climb over the wall or grow wings to fly out. Climbing over the wall was definitely impossible. There weren't many players who had the ability to climb over the wall. Moreover, stealth and climbing were conflicting. Yu Huichang City's walls were empty. If they climbed over the wall in front of Wang Yu, wouldn't they be exposing themselves? As for wings, they were very rare. Even a rich guild like Finger Pointing the Heavens only had a few dozen. Normal players wouldn't even have one. Moreover, flying in the sky was even more eye-catching than climbing the wall. There was no way Wang Yu wouldn't notice them. As such, Wu Henzi was definitely still in Yu Huichang City. After all, she could only be covered by more people. As long as she's still in Yu Huichang City. Wu Ji rubbed his chin. I'll find someone to help. After saying that, Wu Ji opened up his friends list and sent a message to Blood Red War Flag. Help me find people. Assassins from the King's Guild. 1,000 gold per person. Making the best use of everything was already an instinct for Wu Ji. In terms of fighting, Chuanjin City had Wang Yu. No one could shake their position. However, in terms of finding people, it was better to have more people. At this time, he naturally had to find Blood Red War Flag. Blood Red War Flag was a very loyal person. Moreover, it wasn't difficult for them to find people. After all, Blood Alliance made up 1/10 of the population of Yu Huichang City. Finding a dozen people in Yu Huichang City was just a little troublesome for them. 1,000 gold per person was considered a high price. Blood Red War Flag was a very busy person. When they received Wu Ji's message, they were chatting with others. Seeing Wu Ji's icon flash, Blood Red War Flag quickly opened the message. After looking at it, they replied with a strange expression. Assassins from the King's Guild? Did those guys offend you? No, Wu Ji replied. Oh, Blood Red War Flag looked at the other chat window and let out a long sigh of relief. However, before Blood Red War Flag could relax, Wu Ji immediately said, but they offended Old Cow. Old Cow is very angry now. The consequences are very serious. Nyo Shun. Seeing Wu Ji's third message, Blood Red War Flag's face immediately turned pale. At the same time, another player from Blood Red War Flag also sent a message. Blood Red Boss, your Blood Alliance is the biggest guild in Yu Huichang City. Only you can do this for me. Blood Red War Flag's gaze fell on the name in the chat window. It showed Southern Giant God. Chapter 1374. That's right, it was the southern giant god from the Assassin's Guild that was killed by Wuji. According to the Assassin's Guild original plan, Traceless would leave after tricking Wang Yu's seal. The southern giant god and the rest of the Assassin's Guild would stay behind. Who would have thought that Wang Yu would react so quickly and order the city to be sealed? Before the Assassin's Guild could escape, they were trapped in Yu Huicheng. Traceless had no choice but to hide in the crowd of Yu Huicheng's players and leave the teleportation point. However, since Traceless and the others were able to accurately pinpoint Wuji's coordinates, they naturally knew that there was a coordinate tracking service in the game. Even with so many players as cover, Traceless was inevitably worried that the Quanzhen sect would come knocking on his door. After all, he had a guilty conscience. Moreover, the people from Qiuanzhen were not to be trifled with. This was Qiuanzhen's territory. As long as they could not leave the city, it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. However, the city gate was sealed by Wang Yu. The Assassin's Guild could not escape even if they wanted to. Helpless, as the manager of the Assassin's Guild, the Southern Giant God could only contact Blood Red War Flag and hope that they could help them leave the city. Everyone might ask if the Southern Giant God was stupid enough to ask Blood Red War Flag for help. Of course not. On the contrary, the Southern Giant God was very smart. Blood Red Alliance was one of the top guilds in the country. It was one of the top guilds in the entire game, let alone in Yu Huicheng. In the game, strength came from numbers. Therefore, the Southern Giant God instinctively thought that Qiuanzhen's people becoming the city lord was due to luck. The ones who had the right to speak were actually Blood Red Alliance. As long as Blood Red War Flag spoke, Qiuanzhen would have to obediently open the city gate. Finding Blood Red War Flag was also reasonable. Obviously, the Southern Giant God had underestimated the depth of Yu Huicheng's waters. Not only was Blood Red Alliance the first guild to come into contact with Qiuanzhen, they were also the first guild to be taken care of by Wang Yu. In this game, there was no one who understood Qiuanzhen better than Blood Red War Flag. To move unhindered behind Qiuanzhen, Blood Alliance couldn't afford to offend him. Just look at Wang Yu and Wuji. These two vicious people, they could easily destroy Blood Alliance. What was the point of offending this group of fellows for such a small profit? The Blood Red War Flag was dumbfounded after receiving the message from Wuji. They had the urge to blacklist the South Heaven Giant God and send a screenshot to Wang Yu to prove their innocence. However, on second thought, Blood Red War Flag realized that Blood Red Alliance was a famous guild. The Southern Giant God had only asked Blood Red Alliance to escort the Assassin's Guild out of the city. If they rejected him right away, it would seem like they were terrified. That would be too cowardly. Therefore, Blood Red War Flag tactfully rejected the Southern Giant God. Whether or not the city gate is opened is up to Qiuanzhen. Blood Red Alliance and Qiuanzhen have never interfered with each other. If we force them to open the gate, it will hurt their relationship. Blood Red War Flag, am not that kind of person. Blood Red War Flag had been through a lot. They were able to say it so naturally and righteously, so much so that the silly Southern Giant God didn't understand what Blood Red War Flag was trying to say. After all, the Assassin's Guild had always taken money to get rid of disasters. The Southern Giant God thought that Blood Red War Flag was on the same side as them and was trying to negotiate with him. Therefore, the Southern Giant God said, "Boss Blood Red, you can't say that." Qiuanzhen closed the city gate without permission, severely affecting the gaming experience of players in Yu Huicheng. You're doing this on behalf of the heavens. Maybe one day, you'll become the city lord after you accumulate enough popularity. Besides, the Assassin's Guild isn't asking you to help us for free. As long as we can get out of the city, here's 100,000 gold coins as a service fee. As expected, the faces on the negotiation table were always this ugly. The giant god of the Southern Heaven had first placed a high hat on Blood Red War Flag's head, then offered a high price. Now that he had fame and fortune, he was not afraid that Blood Red War Flag would not agree. However, what the Southern Giant God didn't know was that his flattery almost scared Blood Red War Flag into a coma. Doing justice on behalf of the heavens? City Lord? Stop giving me trouble, all right? This is a matter of principle, not money. Blood Red War Flag replied helplessly. However, the Southern Giant God insisted. There are 15 of us. How about 10,000 gold coins for each of us? Boss Blood Red, that's quite a lot. You can't be too greedy. It's just Chuanjin. Do you really care about offending them? Hey, Blood Red War Flag was in a bad mood after seeing the Southern Giant God's message. Damn it, I've tried my best to distance myself from you. But you're just going to be so shameless. What do you mean by that? By saying that, he was clearly saying that if Blood Red War Flag didn't agree to the request, it would mean that they were afraid of Chuanjin. There was a saying that went, "Heaven has a way out, but you refuse to take it, but hell has no way out, yet you insist on coming." Initially, Blood Red War Flag was biased towards Chuanjin and Wang Yu. However, they were too embarrassed to sell the Assassin King Association to Wuji because of their pride. However, after hearing the Southern Giant God's words, Blood Red War Flag immediately knew what to do. With that thought, Blood Red War Flag decisively replied to the Southern Giant God. Since you're so sincere, and I'm not an unreasonable person, you can transfer the money to me first and wait for me at Han's Tavern. That's right. I'll wait for you right away. After seeing Blood Red War Flag's reply, the Southern Giant God was overjoyed, as he thought there was nothing that money couldn't buy in this world. If there was, it meant that you didn't have enough money. All right, it's done. Let's gather at Han's Tavern. After coming to an agreement with Blood Red War Flag, the Southern Giant God sent a message to the Assassin King Association's channel. He then said to Wu Hentzi, "Boss, we have to transfer 150,000 gold coins to Blood Red War Flag. Damn it, that asshole is really evil. It's just 150,000 gold coins." Wu Hentzi said generously, "Ingzhou has transferred 500,000 gold coins to us. It's not a loss. However, I have a feeling that Blood Red War Flag isn't reliable." "Oh," the others of the Assassin King Association asked curiously, "What's going on? Boss, have you worked with Blood Red War Flag before?" "No, it's just a woman's intuition," Wu Hentzi said. "Humph." Everyone sent a disdainful emoji. The Southern Giant God even curled his lips and said, "A woman's intuition isn't as reliable as gold coins. I don't believe 150,000 gold coins isn't enough." "You're right. See you at the tavern." Wu Hentzi nodded and transferred 150,000 gold coins to the Southern Giant God. The Southern Giant God then transferred the money to Blood Red War Flag. After the Blood Red War Flag received the gold coins from the Giant God, it forwarded them to Wuji without even looking at them. It then sent a message to Wuji. "The person Ox God is looking for is now at Han's Tavern." After sending the message, Blood Red War Flag revealed a relieved smile. Chapter 1375. Wuji was not surprised at all when he received the message and gold from Blood Red War Flag. After all, even the Southern Sky Giant God knew how to find a backer. How could Wuji not have guessed this with his intelligence? After receiving the message, Wuji relayed Blood Red War Flag's message verbatim to Wang Yu. "Got it," Wang Yu replied and walked toward the inn with his qinggong. On the other hand, the Assassin Kings Guild also came to the inn from all corners of Yuhuicheng. At this time, the players were either working or going to school. It was the time when no one was around. Even if they were online, they would be gathering for dungeons and clearing dungeons, so there were not many people in the inn. When the Southern Sky God, who was the first to arrive at the tavern, arrived, there were only a few players in the tavern. By the time the Assassin Kings Association's members had all arrived, most of the players had already left the tavern. Only one player sat in a corner with his back, facing the Assassin Kings Association's members. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Wahenzi scanned his surroundings and asked the South Heaven Giant God with a frown, "Where are the people of the Blood Alliance? Why aren't they here yet?" The Assassin Kings Guild was in the business of killing people and robbing them. This kind of shady business was very sensitive to the concept of time. Traceless was quite annoyed that the Blood Alliance had not arrived yet. The customer was the Jade Emperor. Everyone had paid, so the Blood Alliance should have been waiting here. Instead, they were making the customer wait here. It was obvious that the inn was bullying the customers. If not for the urgency of the situation, Traceless would have been furious. Don't be anxious. Let me ask you first. The Southern Sky Giant God knew that his boss had a bad temper. Seeing that Traceless was getting impatient, he quickly opened his friend's list and asked Blood Red War Flag, "Boss Blood Red, where are you guys? Why aren't you here yet?" Soon, Blood Red War Flag replied, "We've been here for a long time. We're in the inn." The Southern Sky Giant God immediately stood up and jumped onto the bench. He looked around and immediately saw the player drinking alone in the corner. Now that there was only one outsider in the inn, the Blood Alliance couldn't have sent anyone else. Thinking to this point, the Southern Sky Giant God raised his head and said to the player, "Hey, are you from the Blood Alliance?" However, the player acted as if he didn't hear the Southern Heaven Giant God's words. Seeing that the other party was ignoring him, the Southern Sky Giant God frowned. He quickly walked up to the player and knocked on the table. "Hey, I'm asking you a question. Are you from the Blood Alliance?" The player didn't even raise his head as he asked, "Are you the boss of the Assassin Kings Guild?" "Ugh." The South Heaven Giant God said awkwardly, "No. No." The player's tone was still cold as he said, "You don't have the right to talk to me. Get your boss here." The Southern Heaven Giant God was so angry that he almost rolled his eyes. However, remembering that the person in front of him was from the Blood Alliance, the Southern Heaven Giant God had no choice but to swallow his anger. He turned around and looked at Wu Hensei with a troubled expression. The Assassin Kings Guild was currently in troubled times. Wu Hensei didn't want to cause more trouble, so he stood up and walked up to the player. "I'm the leader of the Assassin Kings Guild, Wu Hensei." "Sir?" Before Wu Hensei could finish, the person suddenly turned around. Wu Hensei was stunned when he saw the player's handsome square face. He said in fear, You are?" The player said coldly, "I'm your husband. Don't you know me already?" "Yeah." Hearing the player's words, the Assassin Kings Guild members were dumbfounded. The Southern Heaven Giant God was even more confused. "Boss, your husband plays this game too. Introduce him to us." "Introduce my ass." Wu Hensei was shocked and angry at the same time. "This is the Iron Bull." As he spoke, Wang Yu had already risen to his feet and reached out his hand to grab Wu Hensei. Wu Hensei reacted swiftly too. With a sidestep, he appeared beside the Giant God of South Heaven and used the Giant God of South Heaven as a shield. Before the Southern Heaven Giant God could react, Wang Yu's hand had already grabbed the Southern Heaven Giant God's neck. Wang Yu was slightly startled when he realized he had grabbed the wrong target. He casually tossed the Southern Heaven Giant God away. The Southern Heaven Giant God screamed in agony as he fell onto a table and smashed it into pieces. The tavern owner appeared beside the Southern Heaven Giant God, as if he had teleported and hugged his leg. Meanwhile, Wang Yu didn't seem to care about the Southern Heaven Giant God's life. Instead, he looked at Wu Hensei in surprise and said, "Substitution? Moon Shadow Sect's traceless snow steps? No wonder you're so daring. You know the Moon Shadow Sect?" Wu Hensei couldn't help but be astounded when he heard Wang Yu expose his origins with a single sentence. The Moon Shadow Sect was similar to the Swallow Sect, a sect that practiced Qigong. Martial arts, on the other hand, were a type of attacking technique. Qigong deviated from the main theme. With the rapid development of science and technology, there was no future in learning Kung Fu. Qigong was even more useless. Serious Kung Fu practitioners would not spend their entire lives learning this thing. After all, it was useless even if they learned it. Because of this, most of the people who learned Qigong went down the wrong path, because they had no future, so they brought shame to the Kung Fu circle. Therefore, the Qigong sect had always been disliked by others. As time passed, it declined. Even the most famous Swallow sect was not known by many people in the Kung Fu circle. The Moon Shadow sect was the kind of sect that was as good as dead. Even Wu Hensei himself sometimes doubted if the Moon Shadow sect really existed in the world, and if his master was just fooling him. It was easy to imagine how shocked Wu Hensei was when Wang Yu revealed his background. Of course, reputation was reputation, and strength was strength. Although the Moon Shadow sect was so small that even he doubted his life, The moon shadow sect spectral snow steps was as famous as the Yang family's 7 astral steps. In order not to let the Kung Fu go extinct, the Wang family had been collecting all kinds of ancient martial arts in the library since 100 years ago. Of course, Wang Yu knew about the spectral snow steps. I know, Wang Yu replied calmly. Seeing that you are a martial artist, I'll give you a chance. Return the stamp to me, and I won't pursue the matter of you pretending to be my wife. Wang Yu was a grandmaster, and his mind was detached from worldly affairs. Anger came and went quickly. It had been so long, and although Wang Yu was still a little angry, it was mostly gone. Since Wu Hengzi was a martial artist like him, he had to give him a chance. Return it to you? However, Wu Hengzi sneered. There's no reason for us to return what we got. If you want the stamp, give me the money. 1 million gold coins, not a cent less. Chapter 1376. At that instant, the giant god of southern heaven also broke free from the inn owner's restraint. He pointed at Wang Yu from afar and stomped his feet. You really don't know what's good for you, kid. Our reinforcements will be here soon, and you still dare to act tough here? Reinforcements? Wang Yu smiled calmly. Are you talking about the Blood Alliance? That's right. The giant god of southern heaven said proudly, the leader of the blood-red war flag is coming here with his men. If you know what's good for you, open the gate and let us go. Otherwise, don't blame us for not showing mercy. In the eyes of the giant god of southern heaven, the people from the Quan Jin sect would be annihilated in no time against a colossal force like the Blood Alliance. Therefore, he did not realize that the blood-red war flag had already sold them out. Wang Yu looked down at the giant god of southern heaven and said, Then why do you think I'm here? The giant god of southern heaven was dumbfounded after hearing Wang Yu's words. He was stunned for a few seconds before he yelled furiously, F***K this shameless blood-red war flag. How dare you sell us out? The others of the Assassin King's Guild exchanged glances with one another. Their faces were filled with anger. All right, it's time for you to give up. Wang Yu turned around and said to Wu Hengzi, hand over the seal, and I can forgive you for pretending to be my wife. Are you kidding me? Wu Hengzi chuckled. Don't you see how many people we have? If you want the seal, you have to be capable enough. Saying this, Wu Hengzi pointed at Wang Yu and ordered, Let's take care of Chuanjin first. Then we'll settle the score with the Blood Alliance. Whoever kills this kid will get half of the commission. This time, the Assassin King's Guild had received a total of 500,000 gold coins as commission. Half of it would be 250,000 gold coins. Money was a good thing. There was no way the Assassin King's Guild, who only cared about money, could resist the temptation. Without saying a word, they charged at Wang Yu with daggers in their hands. Actually, traceless actions were understandable. Other than Wang Yu, everyone else in the tavern was a member of the Assassin's Guild. Everyone knew that martial artists were always more confident. Even if Traceless E knew how powerful Wang Yu was, she didn't think that the guy in front of her, who looked about the same age as her, could be that strong. There were 15 of them. How could they not have a chance of winning? Besides, so what if Wang Yu could take on 15 of them by himself? Don't forget that this was a game. At most, he would just die once. How much was his life worth? Compared to the seal, it was not even worth mentioning. Among the members of the King Assassin Association, the one closest to Wang Yu was the South Heaven Giant God. As soon as Wu Hengzi's voice fell, he rushed to Wang Yu's back and stabbed him with his dagger. Humph! How stubborn! Wang Yu harumphed coldly when he saw the members of the Assassin King's Guild surrounding him. Without even turning his head around, he kicked the stool behind Wang Yu into the air and landed squarely on the South Heaven Giant God's face. Whoosh! The stool shattered into pieces. The South Heaven Giant God was knocked backward by the impact. At the same time, the owner of the tavern teleported to the South Heaven Giant God's side and grabbed his thigh, saying, It's just a small business. Please show some mercy. F***K. The South Heaven Giant God cursed furiously when he saw his companions had reached Wang Yu, but he was being held back. He hurriedly took out his gold coins, but in the meantime, Wang Yu had already started fighting the members of the Assassin King's Guild. The specialty of the assassin class was to sneak around and kill people instantly with explosive power when the opportunity presented itself. They did not have much of an advantage in melee combat. Therefore, the stealth skill was the most important skill for an assassin, as all of their damage output revolved around the stealth skill. However, the stealth skill was easy to deal with for other players, but without items like the Eye of Truth, unless they were a tank class or a player with money, most people would not be able to survive a single combo from assassin. They could only close their eyes and wait for death when faced with a dozen assassins. This was also why the Assassin King's Guild was infamous. After all, no class would dare claim to be the best in terms of mobility and stealth. The Assassin King's Guild was much more professional than Xuanzhen when it came to running away if they could not win. Everyone was not afraid of being stolen, but were they not afraid of being remembered? However, the Assassin King's Guild was unlucky today. Their opponent was Wang Yu. Who was Wang Yu? He was a human-shaped cheat that came with the ability to detect stealth. The assassin's stealth skill had nowhere to hide from Wang Yu. Would an assassin still be an assassin without stealth? Of course not. Those who had witnessed Wang Yu's strength knew that if they wanted to deal with this maniac, they could not treat him like a human. They had to treat him like a boss. If it was a professional player like Ning Jing Ziyuan, Wang Yu might be able to deal with a dozen or so of them at the same time. However, the dozen or so assassins from the Assassin King's Guild were nothing to Wang Yu. Wang Yu spread his arms wide and deflected the attacks from all directions. In the time it took for the South Heaven Giant God to take out his money, the people of the Assassin King Association were all knocked to the ground by Wang Yu. Yes, knocked to the ground. Wang Yu did not know who had the seal, so he would not let these people die so easily. Meanwhile, the Southern Giant God had also finished paying. When he raised his head and saw his companions lying on the ground, he was dumbfounded. Be it in the game or in real life, it was much more difficult to knock out an opponent than to kill them all. However, Wang Yu had knocked out so many people in such a short period of time. Was he even human? The Southern Giant God looked at Wu Hengxi not far away in fear. The shock on Wu Hengxi's face was even greater than the Southern Giant God's. The Southern Giant God was only an ordinary person. In his eyes, Wang Yu had only knocked out his opponents. However, in the eyes of a martial artist like Wu Hengxi, it was a completely different story. The technique that Wang Yu had just used was called the 18 Falls of the Stained Clothes. It was one of the techniques that every martial artist had to learn. It was one of the basic lessons for all martial artists. There was no way Wu Hengxi would not know about it. It was said that once the technique was mastered to the highest level, it would cause one's clothes to touch the ground. Wu Hengxi had always scoffed at such nonsense. After all, in Wu Hengxi's opinion, no matter how strong a person was, it would not be so ridiculous. However, after witnessing the scene, Wu Hengxi finally understood what it meant to be a frog in a well. No wonder the Wang clan was able to dominate a region and was known as the supreme of the pugilistic world. If a young junior from the Wang clan was already so capable, what more could the others do? The supreme of the pugilistic world was indeed worthy of its reputation. Nan Nan, control him. Chapter 1377. The South Heaven Giant God was quite obedient. After receiving Wu Hengxi's order, he held his dagger and dashed toward Wang Yu's back, aiming a gouge at Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu slightly leaned to the side and grabbed the South Heaven Giant God's wrist with his right hand. With a pull, the South Heaven Giant God was sent flying with a cry of pain. At the same time, the air behind Wang Yu twisted as Wu Hengxi showed up. She flipped her dagger and slashed at Wang Yu with a gouge. Double gouge, an assassin's coordination and control technique. First, one of them would make a feint, while the other would wait for the opportunity to launch the real attack while the opponent was dodging the attack. As the saying went, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands, and a strong man was no match for numbers. Wang Yu just tossed the South Heaven Giant God away. Before he could regain his balance, Wu Hengxi's dagger had already reached him. Bang! The dagger in Wu Hengxi's hand landed heavily on Wang Yu's head. Huh! Wu Hengxi could not help but blurt out proudly, No matter how strong you are, aren't you still? Huh? Before Wu Hentzi could finish her words, the smile on her face suddenly froze. Wang Yu, who was under her control, turned into fragments with a bang. Crap, it's a clone. Wu Hentzi was shocked and hurriedly used his movement technique to dodge to the side. However, it was too late. Wu Hentzi only felt a chill behind his head. Then, a big hand grabbed the back of Wu Hentzi's head and pushed it forward. Ouch! Wu Hentzi screamed and fell to the ground. Under the powerful force, Wu Hentzi was pushed to the entrance of the tavern, scraping the ground. Walla-lala! The tables and chairs were smashed into pieces. It had to be said that the system was really unscrupulous in order to cheat the players of their money. The tables and chairs in the tavern were made of mud, and the players were afraid that they would shatter if they let out a fart. As a result, after playing the game for a long time, when the players went out to eat in the real world, they would be very careful with the tables, chairs, and tableware. It was extremely cultured, and the quality of the people had been improved in a disguised way. Lont and Company could be said to have made great contributions. The tavern owner's movement technique was extremely fast. In a flash, he appeared beside Traceless. He held a stool leg in his hand and poked Traceless, but, "Hey, Honorable Lord Assassin, are you still alive? Please compensate me." That's a total of. Traceless was already in such a state, but the owner of the tavern still didn't forget to ask for compensation. This arrogant fellow vividly demonstrated how unreasonable he was. Traceless was held back by the tavern owner and couldn't move at all. Wang Yuan hurriedly approached Traceless in an attempt to capture him alive. At that moment, the Assassin Kings Association players who had been beaten by Wang Yu saw that Traceless had been humiliated by Wang Yu. They quickly got up and surrounded Wang Yu to buy time for Traceless to escape. Of course, none of these fellows were a match for Wang Yu. If they didn't have any control methods, it would be completely useless to use human lives to fill in the gaps. Such an encirclement naturally wouldn't have any effect on Wang Yu. In the blink of an eye, the assassin's encirclement was torn apart by Wang Yu. Wang Yu didn't even pause for a moment before arriving in front of Traceless. Seeing that Traceless was about to be captured by Wang Yu, the giant god of the southern sky looked at Traceless, who was being held back by the tavern owner. He seemed to have thought of something. He grabbed a stool from the side and threw it at the back of Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu didn't even look at it. With a wave of his hand, the stool was smashed into pieces by Wang Yu. Yeah, the giant god of the southern sky clenched his fists in excitement when he saw Wang Yu falling into his trap. However, the tavern owner appeared in front of the giant god while dragging Traceless with one hand. He reached out his hand and said, "It's just a small business. Please show some mercy." "Why should I?" The giant god of the southern sky almost burst into tears as he looked at the profiteer in front of him. Damn it, he had to pay for the stool that someone threw at him, but he had to pay for the stool that he threw at someone else. What the hell was going on? How could he bully someone like this? However, the tavern owner said something that convinced everyone when he saw the giant god of the southern sky's confusion. It can't be helped. He's the city lord of Yu Huicheng. Damn it. The giant god of the southern sky took out his money pouch in tears. Even though the giant god of the southern sky had to pay for the stool, it was not completely useless. At least the tavern owner had teleported Traceless away from Wang Yu's attack range. At this time, the members of the Assassin Kings Association finally realized that they had met a tough opponent this time. They were already far weaker than their opponents, and there was also the tavern owner who was holding their hands. There was no way they could beat them. Traceless was quite decisive. He immediately gave the order, "He's a tough opponent, retreat." After receiving the order, the people of the Assassin Kings Guild immediately used their stealth skills and vanished from Wang Yu's sight. They then rushed out of the tavern without looking back. Even though Wang Yu's murderous intent locator was impressive, it was based on the fact that he was the target of the other party. Now that the people of the Assassin Kings Guild were only focused on running away, no one had the time to look back. As a result, Wang Yu had lost all his targets. It couldn't be helped. No matter how strong an expert was, they had to admit defeat in front of the system. After all, he was the real god of creation, so he had to give him some face. Seeing that his opponents had all escaped, Wang Yu couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If Wang Yu hadn't wanted to capture all of his opponents alive, how could it be like this, where he didn't even manage to capture a single person's eye? He had been too careless. Don't let a single one escape. Just as Wang Yu was feeling depressed, a familiar voice came from outside the tavern. Wang Yu looked out and saw that the tavern entrance was filled with Blood Alliance players. Wu Ji floated in the air with a faint purple eye above his head. The Eye of Truth was only 700 gold each. Xuanjin obviously didn't lack that bit of money. Under the illumination of the Eye of Truth, the players of the Assassin King's Guild had nowhere to hide. 2 rows of shield bearers lined up in a row and blocked the way. The people of the Assassin King's Guild were trapped on the street. Seeing Wang Yu suddenly have so many helpers, the people of the Assassin King's Guild were dumbfounded. Damn, didn't they say that Xuanjin had less than 20 people? There were at least 200 of them. However, the observant Traceless noticed that the guild insignia on the player's chest were different from Xuanjin's. So he said with a cold face, "Who are you people? We have no grudges against each other in the past. Do you really have to interfere in the grudge between the Assassin King's Guild and Xuanjin?" As expected of a notorious small group, Traceless words sounded like he was admitting defeat, but in reality, it was a threat. His meaning was very obvious. He was telling random people to mind their own business. In Yu Huicheng, apart from Xuanjin, Blood Alliance didn't fear anyone. Of course, he wasn't afraid of Traceless' threat. Chapter 1378. Blood-Colored Alliance? The giant god of southern heaven stomped his feet and yelled, "Damn it, where's that F*King blood-colored war flag? Get that son of a B*TCH out." The giant god of southern heaven's words made everyone uncomfortable. Their eyes flickered, not knowing where to look. Ugh! The black-armored knight coughed awkwardly and said, "Why are you looking for him?" "I'm looking for that son of a B*TCH. It's none of your business." The giant god of southern heaven continued to rage. The black-armored knight said with a dark expression, "I'm that son of a B*TCH. Huh." Wang Yu and the others burst out laughing at blood-colored war flag's reply. F*CK. The giant god of southern heaven jumped to his feet and cursed. "You shameless B***starred. I've already spent my money. How dare you betray me? What choice do I have?" Blood-colored war flag spread his hands and said with a wronged expression, "I already said I'm not doing it, but you're forcing me to die. I have no choice but to send you to your deaths. You." The giant god of southern heaven was enraged when he saw the person who betrayed him standing right in front of him. He was about to curse when Wu Hengxi reached out his hand to stop him. Wu Hengxi then stared at blood-colored war flag and said, "Boss blood-colored war flag, since you took someone's money, you're going against us after taking our money. That's not right." "I'm sorry." Blood-colored war flag spread his hands and said, "I didn't take your money." After saying that, blood-red war flag looked at Wu Ji, who was in midair. "Huh." When Wu Ji saw this, he grinned and said, "Boss Wuhan, all's fair in war. Our Quanjin sect and your Assassin's Guild each have their own methods. Yesterday, you stole my staff, and today, I took your money. Now, we don't owe each other anything, so we're even. I'll take that staff as a purchase from you." T. Wu Hengxi said angrily, "Why would an assassin like me want your stupid staff? How would I know? You were the one who wanted my staff." Wu Ji curled his lips, then narrowed his eyes and said, "Why don't you get it back to me?" Wu Ji's staff was only a piece of dark gold equipment. Its market value was at most 10,000 gold. Traceless wasn't a fool. He wasn't willing to spend 150,000 gold on a staff that he couldn't use. Hearing that Wu Ji wanted to buy the staff, Traceless took out the staff and threw it at Wu Ji. Wu Ji casually took the staff and equipped it in his hand. "Where's the money?" Traceless couldn't help but ask when he saw that Wu Ji had no intention of paying. Wu Ji said blankly, "Did I say I returned the money to you? You. Me." Wu Ji's shameless behavior directly made Traceless' lungs explode. He pointed at Wu Ji and cursed, "Are you F*King shameless? I didn't say I was shameless. Wuji smiled and said, I just told you there's nothing too deceitful in war. Who knew that you wouldn't listen to my advice? I'm your enemy now. How about this? As long as you hand over the Saga City seal, I'll return this 150,000 gold to you. F*CKU. Traceless scolded Wuji fiercely. He didn't want to talk to Wuji anymore. Instead, he asked Blood Red War Flag with a cold face. Blood Red War Flag boss, are you going to get involved in this mess? Hee. Blood Red War Flag smiled faintly and said, Our blood alliance has always been on good terms with Chuanjin. Chuanjin's business is our business. Good, very good. Traceless nodded and said, Blood Red War Flag boss, there's still a long way to go. I hope you know what to do. Then Traceless turned his head and said to the Assassin King's Guild, Let's go. After saying that, Traceless swung the dagger at his neck, turning it into a white light. The rest of the Assassin King's Guild followed suit. The white light lit up, and under everyone's shocked gazes, the Assassin King's Guild members all committed suicide. F*CK. Seeing this scene, the Blood Red War Flag and the others were shocked. Wang Yu and Chuanjin could not help but frown. In the end, they were a small group of troublemakers that were on par with Chuanjin. When they were angry, they were just as terrifying as Chuanjin. Especially when Blood Red War Flag saw Traceless eyes before he died. A layer of cold sweat appeared on his back for no reason. Everyone, go to the resurrection point. Seeing that the Assassin King's Guild members committed suicide, Wuji immediately gave the order to the Chuanjin people in midair. Blood Red War Flag heard this and said, Don't worry, I've already set up an ambush at the bandits' resurrection point. Ambush? Wuji curled his lips and said, Stop messing around. When has your blood alliance ever blocked the bandits' resurrection point? This Blood Red War Flag's face turned red. Wasn't that right? The reason why the assassin was the most popular class was because of the existence of the stealth skill. This class's escapability was the best out of all the classes. They came and went without a trace. As long as their skills were good enough, it was not difficult for an assassin to beat up a team of the same level, let alone escape. Chasing an assassin was much harder than killing an assassin. This was also why the Assassin King's Guild had to go on a rampage. Damn, if they couldn't win, they could at least run, right? Even if they couldn't run, at most they would die once and return to the resurrection point. No matter how rich a guild was, they couldn't have Eye of Truth open 24/7 to block the resurrection point. As expected, the moment Wuji finished speaking, Blood Red War Flag sent a message to the people blocking the resurrection point. In the end, the resurrection point quickly replied, I didn't see anyone from the Assassin King's Guild. It was very obvious that the moment the Assassin King's Guild resurrected, they used the stealth skill. The Assassin King's Guild was an opponent on par with Chuanjin. If they openly broke out, normal players from Blood Alliance might not be able to stop them, let alone if they stealthily escaped. After receiving the news that the Assassin King's Guild had escaped, Wuji's mood was exactly the same as Wang Yu's, full of regret. As the saying went, villains died because they talked too much. How could he forget this point? Why did he have to waste time with these people? Letting the Assassin King's Guild escape was a small matter, but the important thing was that these people were already frightened. It would be difficult to find another group of people who knew how to go invisible. Could Yu Huicheng close his door for the rest of his life? The most important thing was that the Assassin King's Guild was not easy to deal with. These bastards already hated Blood Red War Flag. If they had nothing to do, they would most likely take revenge on Blood Alliance. To be able to be on par with Chuanjin, other than having different styles, the Assassin King's Guild and Chuanjin's way of doing things were quite similar. If they couldn't beat Chuanjin's people, could they not beat Blood Alliance's small fries? Thinking of this, Wuji descended from the sky and walked in front of Blood Red War Flag. He patted Blood Red War Flag's shoulder and said, Old Flag, I think it's best if you let your subordinates hide. Chapter 1379. In the game world, players basically all had group consciousness, so guilds were born. The bigger the guild, the stronger their strength. For a guild of blood alliance's size, they would be a force to be reckoned with no matter where they went. However, having more people wasn't necessarily a good thing. After all, players were just normal people and weren't professionally trained soldiers. Once there were more people, the group would start to get bloated. The quality of the players wouldn't be the same, and their discipline would greatly decrease. If the Assassin King's Assassins Guild were an ordinary party or a guild of certain size, the large guilds could easily crush them with their advantages. However, the Assassin King's Assassins Guild was a professional team that specialized in robbing people for a living. It was like a lion fighting a mosquito. If the Assassin King's Guild really wanted to attack Blood Alliance, then Blood Alliance would have a huge headache. Of course, this didn't mean that the big guilds couldn't beat a small group. It was just a matter of whether or not it was worth it. As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes. The Assassin King's Guild fought Blood Alliance. At most, they would get some PK points, and any equipment they dropped would be worth it. Even if they were killed, they wouldn't lose much. For such a big guild like Blood Alliance, the players basically all had their own jobs to run the guild. If they fought, they would have to put down their main job, which was to fight. Moreover, the Assassin King's Guild members were all assassins. As long as they appeared, they could kill. If they couldn't beat them, they could run away at any moment. Big guilds like Blood Alliance definitely didn't want to deal with them. It wasn't worth it to fight them, and if they didn't, they would feel disgusted. Thinking about it, the last time Blood Alliance offended a small group, it was Chuanjin. Blood Red War Flag naturally understood this. Hearing Wuji's words, Blood Red War Flag's expression was complicated. What was an undeserved disaster? Blood Red War Flag was definitely one of them. Originally, this was just a conflict between the Assassin King and Chuanjin. Blood Alliance stood far away and didn't even want to watch the show. In the end, they were forcefully pulled into this mess. Moreover, they had no choice. In this situation, no matter what Blood Red War Flag chose, they would offend one of the two guilds. If they didn't offend the Assassin King, would they offend the Chuanjin army? If they offended the Assassin Guild, they would at most be disgusted by the Assassin Guild. If they really fought, the experts of Blood Alliance wouldn't be easy to deal with. However, if they offended Chuanjin, then they would have to collect their own corpses. However, Blood Red War Flag wasn't the type of person who liked to take the bullet for others. After all, this had started because of Chuanjin, and Blood Red Alliance had offended the Assassins Guild because of Chuanjin. Chuanjin's people naturally wouldn't just stand by and watch. Otherwise, that would be too disloyal. After thinking for a moment, Blood Red War Flag said awkwardly, "Boss Wuji, look at this. Our Blood Alliance is doing this for the sake of our relationship." "I know that," Wuji said indifferently. "Don't worry. Now that the entire process is sealed, the people from the Assassin Association won't dare to kill people." "Really?" Blood Red War Flag said doubtfully. "I've heard of those guys. They even dared to trick the Ox God. Is there anything they wouldn't dare to do?" "Nonsense," Wang Yu said from the side with great experience. "Once the PK reaches a certain number, they will be chased by the guards. Now that the city gate is sealed, of course they won't dare to seek death." "Is this your first day playing the game?" Blood Red War Flag was speechless. They had overlooked this point in a moment of nervousness. Now that a newbie like Wang Yu said that, they felt a little wronged. Indeed, the guard were too strong. No one would be stupid enough to face them head-on. Even a sick person like Wang Yu would have to stay far away from them. The people from the Assassins Guild obviously wouldn't go head-to-head with them. One had to know that if they died with PK points, they would definitely drop equipment. If they dropped the City Lord's seal, then wouldn't they have offended Chuanjin for nothing? Thinking about this, Blood Red War Flag said happily, "Since they don't dare to kill people, then there's no need for us to avoid it." "Listen up, they don't dare to kill people. Not that they don't dare to kill people." Wuji rolled his eyes at Blood Red War Flag, then rubbed his chin and muttered, "If it were us, Chuanjin, what would we do? To shoot the man, first shoot the horse. To capture the thief, first capture the leader." Wang Yu said confidently, "If it were me, I would definitely drag the culprit out and kill him 100 times. Even if I can't find a culprit, I would kill the enemy's most important leader. Wang Yu is indeed the #1 infamous person in the world. When he talked about killing people, it was as casual as eating and sleeping. That's right. Wu Ji nodded and looked at blood-red war flag. Old flag, for our Chuanjin, you have suffered, damn. Blood-red war flag couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Wang Yu and Wu Ji echoed each other, scaring blood-red war flag. Damn, according to what Wang Yu said, as the boss of blood-red war flag would definitely be the #1 target of the Assassin Kings Association. Moreover, the player who killed the Assassin Kings Association was blood-red war flag. If the Assassin Kings Association wanted to target blood-red war flag, there was no need for a reason. Just as blood-red war flag was in a daze, a message suddenly came from the guild channel. Blood-red war flag quickly opened the message and saw blood-red Shura shouting furiously, F***CK, I've been killed. Blood-red war flag was shocked and hurriedly replied, What's going on? How the hell would I know? Blood Shura was still angry. I was flirting with girls on the trading street when a bunch of assassins suddenly appeared and stabbed me. I didn't even have time to draw my sword before I was stabbed to death. As expected, Wang Yu was right. The Assassin Kings Association was looking for the core players of Blood-Red War Flag to take revenge. Blood-Red War Flag had a bunch of underlings with Wang Yu and other experts. The Assassin Kings Association didn't dare to act rashly, so they attacked Blood Shura. Blood-Red War Flag hurriedly opened the guild channel and made an announcement. Everyone be careful, there are assassins. Don't move alone. Just as Blood-Red War Flag made the announcement, Bloodwind Whisper's message appeared in the channel. Damn, I was stabbed to death too. Dark Knight, aren't you behind me? Who stabbed me? Blood Dark Knight. I didn't see clearly. Those people stabbed you to death and immediately went into stealth. Damn, what's going on? Bloodwind Whisper wondered, could it be that someone offended someone from the Quanjin sect? Only those scum would do this. Damn, this guy was a vengeful person. He still had a shadow over Chuanjin. As the boss, Blood-Red War Flag brought a few dozen underlings to help Chuanjin. Naturally, they had no obligation to tell their underlings, so not many people in Blood-Red War Flag knew about this. Chapter 1380. To Blood Alliance, this was not a small matter. After all, in Yu Huicheng, Blood Alliance basically had no natural enemies other than Chuanjin. Coincidentally, only Chuanjin had dealt with Blood Alliance like this. At this moment, what Bloodwind Whisper could think of, others could naturally think of too, especially now that Yu Huicheng had come to seal the city. Could it be that Chuanjin was going to close the city and beat them up? All of a sudden, the players of Blood Alliance recalled the fear of being controlled by Chuanjin. In just a few minutes, another 2 big shots of Blood Alliance had been mysteriously killed. Seeing this situation, Blood Alliance's internal department was in a state of panic. Everyone felt that they were in danger. Even Blood-Red War Flag personally came out to refute the rumors. Everyone thought that Blood-Red War Flag was trying to stabilize their morale and didn't dare to believe them. Subconsciously, they were afraid that some cow would come to them with a mourning stick. This time, the King Assassin Association could be considered to have borrowed the deterrence of the Chuanjin sect to intimidate others. Seeing that his little brother had scared himself to such an extent, Blood-Red War Flag wanted to cry, but had no tears. Boss Wu Ji, you can't just sit back and do nothing. They are now suspecting that the Quanjin sect did it. If this continues, our Blood Alliance will definitely be disbanded. Oh! Wu Ji waved his hand and said, Then let your people disperse. Disperse? Blood-Red War Flag was stunned at first, then said, I know, you are afraid that my target will be too obvious. After saying that, Blood-Red War Flag ordered the Shield Warriors to disperse. The people of Blood Alliance dispersed, and very soon, only Chuanjin's group and Blood-Red War Flag were left on the street. Let's go too. Seeing that the people of Blood Alliance had left, Wu Ji waved his hand at Chuanjin's group. What? Boss Wu Ji, what do you mean? Seeing that Wu Ji had asked Chuanjin's people to leave, Blood Red War Flag was stunned. Disbelief was written all over his face. Although Blood Red War Flag did not have much interaction with Wuji, after working together a few times, they knew that Wuji was not an unscrupulous person. Why did things turn out like this? The people from the Assassin King Association were not weak. If the people from Xuanzhen did not protect Blood Red War Flag, then Blood Red War Flag would not be far from death. If Bloodwind Whisper and Blood Azura were killed, they would at most cause some unrest in the guild. However, if Blood Red War Flag, the guild leader, died as well, there would probably be people from Blood Alliance who would leave the guild. The Quanzhen sect's influence in Afterglow City was not to be trifled with. What do you mean? Wuji said indifferently. You better pray for your own good luck. Let's go. With that, Wuji turned around to leave. Although the Xuanzhen people did not quite understand what Wuji meant, they still obediently dispersed. Only Wang Yu tugged at Wuji in shock and asked, "Are we really going to ignore old Qi? Who cares about him? The grudge between Assassin King Association and Blood Alliance has nothing to do with us." Wuji frowned. "You better stay far away from them." But Wang Yu was just about to say something when he suddenly received a private message from Wuji. "Go, don't ask why. The further, the better." After playing with Wuji for so long, Wang Yu knew that this kid was full of tricks. If he did this, he might have come up with something else. Thus, he nodded and pretended to be helpless. "Okay." After saying that, he jumped onto the roof and ran into the distance. The people from Xuanzhen left one after another. Seeing that they were the only ones left on the streets, Blood Red War Flag was so depressed that he was about to cry. He cursed Wuji's ancestors 180 times in his heart. At the same time, he hated himself for being blind and actually believing in these bastards from Xuanzhen. At the same time, in an alley not far away, an assassin from Assassin King Association opened the guild channel. "Blood Red War Flag, this bastard is alone." "Alone? This kid dares to be alone? Are you sure?" Southern Sky Giant God was shocked. Assassin Association was currently assassinating the higher-ups of Blood Alliance. If Blood Red War Flag dared to be alone, then it was either a trap or this kid was crazy, I'm sure. The assassin replied, "I saw those shield warriors leave. Blood Red War Flag is at the entrance of the tavern." At this moment, Traceless said, "The shield warriors of Blood Alliance aren't important. What's important is whether or not that Iron Ox is here." The people from Assassin Association were all assassins. Although assassins weren't much of a threat to shield warriors wouldn't be able to catch up to assassins either. Assassin Association's target was Blood Red War Flag, so they weren't afraid of Blood Alliance. They were only afraid of Xuanzhen's Wang Yu. The people from Assassin Association had fought Wang Yu before, so they had a good understanding of Wang Yu's strength. In their eyes, Wang Yu is better than 100 Blood Alliance experts. "He's gone too," the assassin replied. "Don't tell me there's an ambush nearby." Southern Sky Giant God was afraid of being tricked. As soon as the Southern Sky Giant Myth finished speaking, Wu Hentzi's vision darkened. A familiar figure flew past him. Wu Hentzi shielded his eyes with his hand and looked up. He immediately sent a message in the guild channel. "There's no ambush. I just saw Iron Bull heading toward the southern part of the city." At this moment, the assassin who was staring at Blood Red War Flag suddenly shouted, "Hurry up! Blood Red War Flag is running away. Follow him, don't let him get away." Wu Hentzi, the South Heaven Giant God, and the others panicked upon hearing the news. When enemies met, their eyes would turn red. If it weren't for Blood Red War Flag's betrayal, Assassin Association would at most be hiding. They wouldn't have to waste their money and lives. Seeing that the culprit was alone, how could they let go of this opportunity? Blood Red War Flag was the leader of a big guild with tens of thousands of subordinates. If it didn't take care of him now, there wouldn't be another chance in the future. As for whether there was an ambush nearby, was it really that important? Obviously it wasn't. Assassin Association was also a group of top experts. Their strength wasn't any weaker than Xuanzhen's group. Their leader, Traceless, was also a martial artist. His strength far exceeded that of ordinary people. Furthermore, everyone was an assassin. If they couldn't win, they could still run away. They had absolute confidence in their profession of assassination. The only person these people were afraid of was Wang Yu. Now that Wang Yu was far away, the Assassin Kings Association naturally had nothing to worry about. As they spoke, everyone activated swift movement and ran toward the coordinates of Blood Red War Flag. Blood Red War Flag also received a message from Wuji. Old Flag, don't be afraid. We're protecting you in secret. Go to the City Lord's mansion. Don't look back. Assassin Association will be here soon. F*CK. When Blood Red War Flag saw Wuji's message, they immediately understood Wuji's thoughts. They said gloomily, Boss Wuji, you can't do this. How dare you use me as bait? Wuji said helplessly, I can't help it. Our Chuanjin doesn't need a beating like you. The only one who needs a beating more is someone they don't dare to beat. Blood Red War Flag sent a speechless emoji and said, It's okay to be bait. Can you leave a few people behind so I can be more daring? No, Wuji said. If we leave too many people behind, we'll look guilty. They won't take the bait. Chapter 1381. Although Blood Red War Flag was the leader of a large guild like the Blood Alliance, in terms of strength, the Blood Alliance wasn't too outstanding. They were much stronger than ordinary experts, but compared to the experts from the Quanjin sect and the Assassin Kings Association, they were much weaker. Blood Red War Flag was naturally terrified of being targeted by the Assassin Kings Guild. Left with no choice, it could only follow Wuji's instructions and head for the City Lord's mansion. Fortunately, the City Lord's mansion was only a street away from the tavern. It did not take long for Blood Red War Flag to arrive at the entrance of the City Lord's mansion. Just as Blood Red War Flag thought it was safe, the members of the Assassin Kings Guild caught up to Blood Red War Flag in stealth mode. The players of the Assassin Kings Guild were all in stealth mode, so Blood Red War Flag did not realize that there was someone behind it. The members of the Assassin Kings Guild could clearly see Blood Red War Flag's every move. There was a saying that when enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. The giant god of Southern Heaven had suffered greatly because of Blood Red War Flag. Not only did he lose money, he also lost face. Now that he saw Blood Red War Flag, he was infuriated. Without saying a word, he charged behind Blood Red War Flag with his dagger. The Blood Red War Flag felt a gust of cold wind behind it. Following this, the air behind it twisted as the South Heaven giant god revealed himself and stabbed the dagger at the Blood Red War Flag's waist from the back. Blood Red War Flag's class was a clumsy knight. His body speed could not keep up with his reaction speed. When he sensed that someone was ambushing him from behind, it was already too late to dodge. However, just when the blood-colored war flag thought that it was going to die for sure, the air between the giant god and the blood-colored war flag suddenly twisted, and a black-robed assassin appeared between them out of nowhere. The assassin raised his right hand the moment he appeared. The pitch-black dagger in his hand reached between the giant god of Southern Heaven and Blood Red War Flag. He flicked it up and blocked the giant god of Southern Heaven's dagger. Clang! After a clear sound, the giant god of Southern Heaven's dagger was blocked to the side. At that moment, Blood Red War Flag turned around. When he saw the black-clothed assassin, he said excitedly, "Brother Yu, you're here." The black-clothed assassin was Baiming Yu, who had been sent by Wuji to protect Blood Red War Flag. The giant god of South Heaven was not someone to be trifled with, either. He was stunned when he saw the intruder. He flipped his left hand and took out another dagger, slashing at Baiming Yu. In online games, a player's attributes were not directly related to their physique. Even if you were as skinny as a match, as long as you added a point to your strength, you could easily flip over a burly mage. Therefore, relatively speaking, being tall and big was not an advantage. After all, the bigger the body, the bigger the target. In any case, a small body would be harder to hit. Therefore, as long as a player was not a tank class that took a beating for a living, basically no one would make their body too big. On the other hand, the South Heaven giant god's physique was his natural advantage. This brat was about 1. 3 meters tall when he stood on his tiptoes. His dagger was aimed directly at Bai Ming Yoyu's crotch. It was very awkward for him to attack like this. Bai Ming Yoyu was not tall, so the giant god of South Heaven's attack was aimed at her waist. If she jumped up, her ankle would be hit, and if she crouched down, her neck would be slit. In other words, she could not jump or crouch down. She could only jump backward and stomp on blood-red war flag's back. She rolled in the air to dodge the attack and landed behind the giant god of South Heaven. Blood-red war flag staggered a few steps forward after being stomped by Bai Ming Yoyu. After stabilizing itself, blood-red war flag drew out its spear and was about to help Bai Ming Yoyu deal with the giant god of South Heaven. However, before blood-red war flag could turn around, the air around them twisted and Wu Hentzi's group appeared and surrounded them. Blood-red war flag's heart skipped a beat upon seeing this. Even blood-red war flag would not be able to defeat the giant god of South Heaven alone. The 15 members of the Assassin King's Guild had all arrived. No matter how strong Bai Ming Yoyu was, she was no match for Wang Yu. She might be able to take on 1 or 2 of them, but it would be quite difficult for her to take on more than 10 experts of the same level. At that instant, Blood-Red War Flag heard Bai Ming Yoyu's voice. "Don't look back. Run to the City Lord's mansion. Don't worry about me." In this situation, of course, survival was more important. It was better to die 1 than 2. Blood-Red War Flag heard Bai Ming Yoyu's command and immediately lowered its body, charging towards the City Lord's mansion without looking back. The Assassin King's Guild's priority was extremely high, thus the assassins could not stop them. Wu Hentzi and the others had no choice but to split up and follow Blood-Red War Flag to the City Lord's mansion. The rest of the members of the Assassin King's Guild turned around and surrounded Bai Ming Yoyu. The giant god of South Heaven charged toward Bai Ming Yoyu with 2 daggers in hand and thrust forward. Bai Ming Yoyu took a slight step backward and waved her hand to block the giant god of South Heaven. Bai Ming Yoyu was an expert with the title of Mercenary King. Even though she was a rising star in Qiuanjin, her strength was not weaker than the old dogs of Qiuanjin City. In fact, she was even slightly stronger than Bao San of To Place One's Pride. Bai Ming Yoyu's daggers were well organized, advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. The giant god of South Heaven leaped up and down and attacked continuously with his daggers. Yet his attacks were all blocked by Bai Ming Yoyu. Wu Hentzi was stunned when she saw Bai Ming Yoyu suppressing the giant god of South Heaven. She could not help but ask when she saw the emblem of the yin-yang fish on Bai Ming Yoyu's chest. "You're Mingjian Daoxue?" Bai Ming Yoyu was a new player in Qiuanjin City, an assassin in Qiuanjin. Wu Hentzi only remembered one of them, Mingjian Daoxue. However, the kid's strength was only so. How could he be so strong? Could it be that even the weakest player in Qiuanjin was as strong as him? No. When Bai Ming Yoyu heard this, she lightly replied with 2 words. Even though it was better for an assassin to keep a low profile, Bai Ming Yoyu did not feel comfortable being mistaken as someone else. Meanwhile, Wu Hentzi blurted out in astonishment. "Ain't nobody from Qiuanjin is this strong too? F***K. Bai Ming Yoyu was unwilling to admit defeat. How did she become a nobody? However, before Bai Ming Yoyu could introduce herself, Wu Hentzi immediately gave an order to his men. "He's just a nobody from Qiuanjin. Don't waste your time on him. Hurry up and take him out." The other players of the Assassin King Association immediately raised their sabers and lunged at Bai Ming Yoyu from all directions. Seeing this, Bai Ming Yoyu kicked the South Heaven giant god away and slammed her head into the ground. Chapter 1382. Enter the Governor's Residence. Just as Blood-Red War Flag was at a loss for what to do, it suddenly received another message from Wuji. Under such circumstances, Blood-Red War Flag's desire to survive was still very strong. Without any hesitation, it charged into the governor's residence with brute force. It had to be said that the priority of the assassin class was too low. Killing Blood-Red War Flag wasn't difficult, but stopping a strength-based player like this was quite difficult. However, Prey like blood-red war flag had to be left for Traceless. Traceless and the others were not far away and were about to reach the governor's residence. Of course, the Assassin Kings Guild did not dare to kill blood-red war flag on its own. Left with no choice, it followed blood-red war flag into the governor's residence. Second brother, save them. Just as the Assassin Kings Guild surrounded blood-red war flag and entered the governor's residence, a voice rang out in everyone's ears. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw that the governor's residence's gate had been closed from the inside. Wuji was standing behind the gate, looking at them. When the Assassin Kings Guild saw Wuji, he was shocked. As if he had discovered something, he turned around and ran out. However, it was too late. Following Wuji's order, Second Elder Een rushed out from the other side of the door with his shield raised. He rushed directly to the side of blood-red war flag, then raised his middle finger and shouted, "Grandson!" to start a group mockery. The Assassin Kings Guild members and blood-red war flag were involuntarily pulled to Een Lao Air's side. Een Lao Air chuckled. He spread his wings and flew out of the governor's residence. Fighting is not allowed in the governor's residence. At that moment, the patrolling guards in the courtyard saw the situation and surrounded them. The guards were very strong, but without the Castellan's orders, they were still very easygoing. Unless it was an extremely vicious and murderous player, the guards would not harm the player's life. Even if the player behaved atrociously in the Castellan's mansion, as long as no one was killed, the guards would only subdue the player and not kill them. After all, leveling up was too difficult. If they were killed by the guards for spitting or urinating on the ground, the game wouldn't be able to continue. In the face of overwhelming strength, even the wretched professions had nowhere to hide. The guards quickly pinned down all the players who had been mocked by Een Lao Air. Because Een Lao Air had flown out of the City Lord's mansion early, he was able to avoid being caught by the guards. As soon as the Assassin Kings Association player was pinned down, Traceless and several other Assassin Kings Association players charged into the City Lord's mansion. Brother Chun, close the door. Seeing that everyone from the Assassin Kings Association had entered the City Lord's mansion, Wuji chuckled and ordered Spring Soar to block the entrance. He then waved his staff and cast invincibility on blood-red war flag's head. Spring Soar, who had been lying in ambush on top of the wall, pointed his staff at the ground and cast a dark barrier. Before Wuji gave the order, a black circle had already appeared under the feet of the Assassin Kings Association players. Before anyone could react, the dark barrier rose from the ground. Traceless was a martial artist, so his reaction speed was godlike. The moment Wuji gave the order to Spring Soar, Traceless sensed that something was wrong. He immediately jumped back and out of the range of the dark barrier. The giant god of the southern sky was not as skilled as Traceless, so he was pinned down by Spring Soar. Fighting is prohibited in the City Lord's mansion. After the crowd was pinned down, Spring Soar jumped out of the City Lord's mansion. The guards yelled and charged forward again. They crushed Spring Soar's dark barrier and pinned all the Assassin Kings Association players to the ground. At that moment, Blood-Red War Flag finally understood why Wuji had asked them to lure the Assassin Kings Association into the City Lord's mansion. Xuanjin's main target was the seals of the Assassin Kings Association. However, the Assassin Kings Association were all assassins who came and went without a trace. As long as they wanted to run, even Wang Yu would have a hard time catching them. As for killing these people to drop the seals, that was even more impossible. If they could not even touch their shadows, how could they kill them? Besides, the seals were precious items with a pitiful drop rate. Even if Zhuge Liang was able to capture them 6 times and 7 times, it was unlikely that they would drop the seals. If they wanted to capture these people, they would have to rely on the powerful guards. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes were useless. Traceless frowned when he saw that all his subordinates had been captured alive. He turned around and ran out of the City Lord's mansion. Seeing that there were still fish that had escaped the net, Wuji immediately ordered, "Don't let a single one of them go." Following Wuji's order, Bao San, to place one's pride, and Ming Jian Daoxue, who had been lying in ambush outside the city lord's mansion, rushed out. Yin Lao Er and Chun Xiang, who had jumped out of the city lord's mansion, followed closely behind. Among them, Ming Jian Daoxue was the fastest. He activated swift movement and rushed to Traceless' side. He raised his sword and stabbed. At the same time, Chun Xiang threw a cloud of poisonous mist at Traceless. However, Traceless did not show the slightest bit of fear in the face of the Chuanjian people's encirclement. She tilted her body to the left, forming a 60-degree angle with the ground. At the same time, she kicked her feet to the side. Under the watchful eyes of the Chuanjian people, Traceless used a strange movement technique to move several meters to the left, evading Ming Jian Daoxue and Chun Xiang's attacks. F***CK. What's going on? Wave-like subtle steps? Wu Henxi's evasive maneuver shocked everyone in the Chuanjian sect. The people from Chuanjian were not inexperienced people. In terms of dodging, Wang Yu did not lose to Traceless. However, no matter how monstrous Wang Yu was, dodging attacks was just a matter of twisting and turning left and right. An ordinary person with sufficient bodily functions and reflexes could also do it. However, Traceless' strange movement technique of moving on the spot was beyond everyone's understanding. It did not make any sense. After evading Ming Jian Daoxue's attack, Traceless turned around and snorted coldly. Do you think you can catch me with just a bunch of trash? Cut the crap. Watch my fist. As soon as Traceless finished speaking, To Place One's Pride used Burst Fist and rushed toward Traceless. Traceless' eyes narrowed. He leaned back and stepped forward with both feet, moving several meters backward to avoid To Place One's Pride's Burst Fist. To Place One's Pride's punch missed, and he fell to the ground. Before he could regain his footing, Traceless raised his right hand and stabbed To Place One's Pride's throat with his dagger. -44444. A huge damage value floated up. To Place One's Pride's HP dropped by more than half. Traceless' right hand pulled back the rope, and the dagger was pulled out from To Place One's Pride's neck. -3333. Another damage value floated up. To Place One's Pride's HP was reduced to a sliver. Yo, you're pretty tough. Traceless' eyebrows twitched. His dagger flew out again, heading straight for To Place One's Pride. In the blink of an eye, Yin Lao Er's giant shield appeared in front of To Place One's Pride. Clang! With a soft sound, Traceless' dagger was deflected. Gotcha. Chapter 1383. Just as Wu Henxi was about to be struck by Mingdu's lightning, Wu Henxi used the same trick again. She tilted her body and kicked off the ground, moving several meters away. Boom! Violent lightning smashed into the ground, creating a crater. Wu Henxi was still unscathed. F***CK. The Quanjin players were once again dumbfounded. The lightning-type magic was known for its swiftness, and Bright Dou's ability to predict was also terrifying. Even a professional expert would be turned to dust by Bright Dou's sneak attack. Yet this woman had dodged it so easily. How is this possible? There was no helping it. When it came to fighting, martial arts practitioners could be considered professionals compared to ordinary people. After all, martial arts practitioners had undergone rigorous training in both reflexes and combat techniques. It was reasonable for them to be stronger than ordinary players. This was basically combat instinct. Wu Henxi was a disciple of the Moonshadow sect. She had learned Qinggong. In gaming terms, this girl had a specialization in dodging. Coupled with the powerful combat skills of an assassin, it made up for her lack of combat skills. The combination of gaming and martial arts produced a strong chemical reaction. This created an expert that even the people of Chuanjian couldn't do anything to. Of course, Yang Na's movement technique was no weaker than Wu Henxi's. If Yang Na was here, even if she couldn't catch Wu Henxi wouldn't be as unstoppable as she was now. Just as everyone from the Quanjin sect was astonished by Wu Henxi's powerful evasion attribute, Wu Henxi raised his right hand diagonally upwards, and the dagger in his hand once again left his hand, flying toward Radiant City along with the rope. Mingdu was shocked. He hurriedly used Blink to dodge Wu Hengxi's dagger. However, Wu Hengxi pulled with her left hand and swung with her right. The dagger arced through the air, bypassing Yin Lao air and flying toward a place one's pride. To place one's pride reacted. The dagger was already in front of his face. It was too late to dodge. Puffed. With a muffled sound, the rope wrapped around to place one's pride's neck, and the dagger stabbed to place one's pride in the throat. To place one's pride, he didn't even make a sound before he turned into a white light. F***CK. To place one's pride, Bao San, who was standing beside Traceless, was infuriated. Before Traceless could pull the dagger back, Bao San reached out and grabbed Traceless' dagger. Then, he pulled the rope back to himself. In terms of strength, Wu Hengxi knew that he wasn't Bao San's match. With Bao San's pull, Wu Hengxi used the momentum to leap up and was directly pulled into the air. He drew a parabola in the air and flew towards the Chuanjian people. At this stage of the game, the majority of players did not possess the ability to engage in aerial combat. Seeing Traceless flying towards him, Yin Lao Air was overjoyed. He raised his shield, held his breath, and focused on Traceless. He began to charge up his power, preparing to use Shield Bash to stun Traceless the moment he fell into his attack range. However, as soon as Yin Lao Air used his skill, Traceless, who was in midair, suddenly leaped into the air and flew over Yin Lao Air's head, dodging Yin Lao Air's Shield Bash. It was the rare assassin skill, Second Jump. Traceless walked the path of evasion, so it was reasonable that he knew this skill. Yin Lao Air's attack missed, and he couldn't help but stagger forward. Bang! Traceless, on the other hand, stepped on Yin Lao Air's back and used the momentum to fly towards Bao San, who was behind Yin Lao Air. Seeing this, Bao San raised his sword and slashed at Traceless with one hand. Unfortunately, a warrior's movements were much slower than an assassin's. Before Bao San could raise his sword, Traceless' left hand had already stabbed into Bao San's eyes. Bao San's heart skipped a beat. He let go of the dagger in his hand and hurriedly covered his eyes. Oomph! Traceless sneered. He retrieved his dagger with his right hand and slapped Bao San's face with his left hand. Slap! Slap! The sound was crisp and clear. Although the damage was only in the tens, Bao San's face turned red. Stay here. At this time, Spring's sword smashed his staff on the ground. A vine extended from under Traceless' feet, twisting and wrapping around Traceless' ankles. Traceless calmly activated Swift Step, took 2 steps forward, and leaped into the air. Then, he leaped out of Spring Source range and landed at the foot of the wall. Before Traceless could stabilize himself, a pair of hands suddenly reached out from under his feet and grabbed his ankles. Traceless felt his feet sink, and he couldn't help but frown. He grabbed the dagger with his right hand and swung it up. The other end of the rope flew straight up the wall with a flying claw. Pata! The flying claw stuck on the wall. At the same time, Traceless grabbed the rope with both hands and pulled hard. His whole body rose into the air, and Baiming Yuyu, who was holding on to Traceless' ankles, was pulled out from the ground. Both of Wu Hengxi's legs suddenly stretched forward, one opening and one closing, and he grabbed onto Baiming Yoyu's neck. With a twist of his waist, Baiming Yoyu was flipped onto the ground. Fortunately, Baiming Yoyu's hands were nimble enough. She pushed the ground with both hands and rolled back into the formation. Only then did she escape Traceless' attack range. Hiss, seeing Traceless nimbleness, the Chuanjian people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. These fellows from the Chuanjian sect were also ruthless people. It was a common thing for them to fight against many when they were outnumbered. Today, there were so many of them surrounding and attacking a girl, but not only did they not even manage to touch the corner of her clothes, one of them even died. This was definitely an unprecedented achievement. While the Chuanjian people were shocked by Traceless' strength, Traceless' side wasn't having it easy either. As a martial artist who specialized in lightness skill, Wu Hen was very proud of his lightness skill. Not to mention a few people, he was confident that he could come and go as he pleased even if there was an army of thousands of men and horses. However, he was already in danger after only a few rounds. Not only did he almost lose his weapon, but he was also almost controlled by that nameless pawn. It really scared Traceless so much that he broke out in a cold sweat. This was the first time Traceless had experienced such a dangerous battle since he started playing the game. Oomph, you guys are pretty good. After he steadied himself, Wu Hentzi praised sincerely. But when this praise came from Traceless' mouth, the people from Chuanjin felt like they were being ridiculed. They all blushed and didn't know how to reply. To be able to force a bunch of shameless hypocrites like the Chuanjin sect into speechlessness, Wu Hentzi could be considered to be unprecedented. Cough, cough. In the end, Chun Xiang's skin was a little thicker. He cleared his throat and said, "Boss Traceless, we've already caught your men. As long as you hand over the seal, you and your men can leave safely. Otherwise, bah." Before Chun Xiang could finish speaking, Wu Hentzi spat and said, "How shameless. You think you can catch me with this group of trash from Chuanjin? You Huicheng, I can come and go as I please." Is that so? As soon as Traceless' voice fell, a familiar voice came from above. If that's the case, won't I lose face as the city lord? Chapter 1384. Old Cow. Hearing this voice, the Chuanjin people were overjoyed. They hurriedly looked up and saw Wang Yu jump down from the roof and land steadily in front of them. Seeing Wang Yu, Wu Hentzi was shocked. Wu Hentzi had seen Wang Yu's ability before. Previously, in the tavern, when everyone from the Wang Association attacked Wang Yu together, they couldn't do anything to him. It could be seen that Wang Yu was strong, and Wu Hentzi was far from his opponent. Moreover, Wang Yu had a group of helpers by his side that forced Wu Hentzi into a corner. Of course, Wu Hentzi had also dealt with Wang Yu before. She knew where Wang Yu's weakness was, so her expression only changed slightly. Then, she raised her eyebrows at Wang Yu and teased, "Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's my hubby." Hubby? Hearing Wu Hentzi's words, the Chuanjin people's eyes widened. They all turned to look at Wang Yu. Their faces were full of shock, surprise, and even a hint of admiration. Meow. Chuanjin had long heard of the gossip of the Wang family's young master having many fiancées, but they never thought that this girl in front of them was one of them. Damn it. Everyone looked at Wang Yu, and then looked at Traceless, who had a voluptuous figure. They were all extremely envious. Why didn't an arranged marriage happen to them? However, even if it really happened to them, they probably wouldn't be able to handle it. After all, the destructive power of Wang Yu's fiancés was much stronger than that of the boss. Yang Na was as pure as ice and as beautiful as jade. Together with this girl in front of them, the three of them were enough to wipe out Chuanjin. Bullsh asterisk T. Sure enough, seeing the Chuanjin people's reaction, Wang Yu immediately became anxious. He hurriedly shouted, "Don't listen to her nonsense. I don't even know her." Food could be eaten indiscriminately, but words could not be spoken indiscriminately. If this reached Mu Zixin's ears, someone would die. Is that so? Why doesn't she call me husband? Everyone rubbed their chins thoughtfully, their faces full of suspicion, making Wang Yu want to cry, but have no tears. A bunch of fools. Seeing that the members of Chuanjin were really getting into a fight with Wang Yu, Traceless sneered. He activated stealth, turned around, and fled. However, before Wu Hentzi could take 2 steps forward, an earthen wall suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Then, a cloud of white lime powder fell from the sky and landed on Wu Hentzi's body. Wu Hentzi's figure reappeared. At this time, Mingdu said lightly, "What do you want to do? Did he let you go?" Mingdu's actions drew everyone's attention away from Wang Yu. Everyone's faces darkened as they surrounded Traceless. Wu Hentzi couldn't help but be startled when he saw that his little trick was seen through, and then he thought of another plan and provoked them. "You're a group of men, yet you're bullying a woman. Don't you have any shame?" "Don't. What's shame?" The members of Chuanjin answered firmly. Hearing that, Traceless almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Wang Yu and said, "Since you're a martial arts practitioner, you shouldn't be like this bunch of trash, right?" It had to be said that Traceless was also a smart guy. Every move he made was aimed at Wang Yu's weak points. Martial arts practitioners were most afraid of bullying the elderly, the weak, women, and children. The Wang family was, after all, a leading figure in the martial arts circle. Although their behavior was strange, they still didn't dare to cross this most basic line. Wang Yu was shameless, but was the Wang family shameless? Although Traceless knew that she was no match for Wang Yu, she was still very confident in her ability to escape. After all, every profession had its own specialization. Wang Yu was a professional fighter, so how could he outrun a Qinggong professional? Moreover, in terms of profession, a Grandmaster combat was slightly inferior to an assassin when it came to escaping. As long as Wang Yu didn't join forces with Chuanjin to deal with her, Traceless was confident that she could escape. Everyone in the town was a wily old fox. Of course, they could see what Traceless was thinking. They all shouted, "Old cow, don't be fooled by her. This woman can run very fast. We have to catch her together. It's not that troublesome." Wang Yu smiled and waved his hand at the Chuanjin people. "This kind of small matter, I can handle it alone. Oldly, clear the way." "This? Okay." Mingdu looked at Wang Yu reluctantly and removed the earth wall. The earth wall disappeared, and the road reappeared in front of Traceless. Wang Yu pointed forward and said indifferently to Traceless, "As long as you can escape from me, I don't want the seal anymore. Also, the city gate will open to let you go. If you can't escape, please return the seal to me. I don't want to be rough with women." Hee hee. Traceless squinted her eyes and laughed. "You said it. Goodbye." After saying that, Traceless turned around and ran. Traceless was a Qinggong practitioner. Even in the game, he put all his points into agility. After activating quickness, he ran at full speed, leaving a phantom behind him. In the blink of an eye, he was near the intersection. Seeing the intersection, Traceless was overjoyed. Assassins were a profession that could turn invisible. When running, they had to keep a close eye on them. Otherwise, they would completely lose their target. A curve at the intersection was the best cover. However, just as Traceless was about to turn, he suddenly felt a chill behind him. Then a big hand grabbed him from behind. F***CK. How is this possible? Feeling the attack behind him, Traceless was shocked. He tilted his body to the left and kicked his feet on the ground. Immediately, his whole body made a left turn at an incredible angle. Swoosh! At the same time, a burly figure swept past Traceless. When Traceless saw the figure's appearance from the corner of his eye, he was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. Traceless was an assassin who put all his points into agility. After activating quickness, Traceless knew better than anyone else how fast he could run. In a situation where he ran first, a Grandmaster combat could catch up to him in a few seconds. How fast was this Grandmaster of combat? Little did he know, although Wang Yu did not put all his points into agility, he still put a lot of points into agility. Moreover, Wang Yu had Qinggong. This was a legit, system-certified Grandmaster of combat escape skill. A full agility archer would not be able to outrun Wang Yu. Naturally, chasing after a full agility assassin like Traceless was not a problem. Luckily, Wu Hengxi's Qinggong technique was extremely brilliant. He was able to make sharp turns while moving at high speeds. If it wasn't for Wang Yu not being able to stop, due to inertia, Wu Hengxi would have been pressed to the ground by Wang Yu. After dodging Wang Yu's attack, Traceless did not dare to stop for a moment. He turned around and ran. However, before he could run more than a few steps, his vision suddenly darkened. Wang Yu jumped over Traceless' head and landed in front of him, forcing him to stop. "How is it? I caught up to you. Can you return me the seal now?" Wang Yu asked, extending his hand. "What's the use of catching up to me?" Traceless said shamelessly, "Only if you can catch me." Chapter 1385. That's not bad. Wang Yu's eyes lit up when he saw the dagger in Wu Hengxi's hand. With a casual wave of his hand, the dagger flew into his hand. Wu Hengxi's heart trembled when the dagger was caught. Although Wu Hengxi's strange dagger looked ordinary, it was a top-tier dark gold-grade weapon with a ballistic speed bonus. It was even faster than an archer's snipe skill. The dagger had only been caught by Bao San because of the long distance. Moreover, the turning greatly reduced the dagger's flight speed. At this time, Wu Hengzi was only 3 steps away from Wang Yu, but Wang Yu had snatched it away so easily. Whether it was his attack speed or reaction speed, both were inconceivable. Wu Hengzi's reaction wasn't slow either. Seeing that the dagger had been snatched away by Wang Yu, he flipped his left hand and another dagger appeared in it. At the same time, he pulled the rope with his right hand and charged at Wang Yu. He raised his hand and stabbed. Wang Yu did not panic. He raised the dagger in his hand. Clang! Wang Yu blocked Wu Hengzi's attack and pushed it aside. Wu Hengzi was a full agility assassin. His strength wasn't high, so his attack priority naturally couldn't compare to Wang Yu's. Wang Yu's attack nearly knocked him off his feet. At this time, Wang Yu's figure slanted, and with a series of kicks, she moved to the other side of Wu Hengzi. The dagger in Wang Yu's hand was tied with a rope. The other end of the rope was still in Wu Hengzi's hand. When Wang Yu flashed to Wu Hengzi's side, the rope naturally followed. Wang Yu lightly swung his arm, and the rope on the dagger slipped under Wu Hengzi's unstable foot, accurately hooking onto Wu Hengzi's leg. Then, Wang Yu yanked. Thud! Wu Hengzi was pulled to the ground. At this time, Traceless didn't seem to feel that he had been pulled to the ground. Instead, he widened his eyes and pointed a dagger at Wang Yu. His face was full of horror, and he didn't know how to express his feelings at all. After a long time, Wu Hengzi slowly came back to his senses. He pointed at Wang Yu and said in horror, No, that's impossible. How can you walk on snow without leaving a trace?" That's right. The movement technique that Wang Yu used just now was the Moon Shadow Sect's unique technique, traceless snow steps. It was also the Qinggong technique that Wu Hengzi used to toy with the Chuanjin people. "I learned it," Wang Yu replied indifferently. At the same time, she swung her hand and a rope was tied around Wu Hengzi's neck. Wu Hengzi's neck and ankles were tied together. Wang Yu didn't believe that this chick could still run after being tied up like this. Impossible. At this time, Traceless couldn't care less about Wang Yu tying him up. He pointed at Wang Yu and said loudly, "The Moon Shadow Sect has only one disciple. I don't remember having a senior brother like you." "I know." Wang Yu stretched out his hand and said calmly, "Give me the claw." Wu Hengzi lowered his head and looked at the grappling hook on the other end of the rope in his hand. He obediently handed it over to Wang Yu. Wang Yu took the claw and tied the 2 ends of the rope into a dead knot. Then, he said, "I learned it from you. T. I don't even know you. How could I teach you?" Traceless said angrily. "Tis," Wang Yu said disdainfully. "Do I need you to teach me this lousy skill? I learned it just by looking at it." "Learn it just by looking at it?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, Traceless was immediately dumbfounded. Traceless snow steps was a skill that Traceless had learned since he was a child. It took him more than 10 years to master it. Now, Wang Yu learned it just by looking at it. Traceless' feelings at this moment were absolutely indescribable. This was no longer as simple as someone secretly learning his ultimate skill. It was like learning a course that you had painstakingly studied for 10 years, but someone else suddenly understood it at a glance. Anyone would start to doubt life. Traceless naturally didn't want to believe what Wang Yu said, but Wang Yu really used it without any hesitation. Compared to Traceless, it was much cleaner. Even if Traceless was unwilling to accept Wang Yu's words, reality wouldn't lie. Actually, it wasn't an exaggeration coming from Wang Yu's mouth. For us martial artists, different paths lead to the same destination. No matter what we learn, it's ultimately the same path. Wang Yu was a martial arts grandmaster. His own martial arts cultivation had already reached an extremely high realm. Wang Yu could understand the complicated movement technique of the 7 steps astral dipper at a glance and master it in just a moment. If he were to learn Wu Hengzi's traceless snow treading, it would be a piece of cake. If Traceless wants to compare himself to grandmaster level experts like us, then he's using the wrong reference point. T. Traceless, who was doubting life, didn't seem to be thinking straight. He rolled on the ground and shouted, like a child in a supermarket whose parents didn't buy him snacks or toys. Wang Yu naturally wouldn't let this guy off. He pulled the rope in his hand, and traceless feet were pulled to his head. Wang Yu grabbed the rope with one hand and dragged Traceless, who was on the ground, back to the mayor's residence. By now, the players had already come online. Because Yu Huicheng had closed the city gates, the players couldn't leave the city, so the streets were filled with players. Traceless was considered a beauty. There weren't many female players in the game, and a beauty with such a good figure was even rarer. Seeing Traceless being dragged through the streets like a dead dog, the players were filled with righteous indignation. They wanted to do justice on behalf of the heavens. However, when they saw who was dragging Traceless, they immediately calmed down. Some even offered to help Wang Yu, but Wang Yu tactfully rejected their good intentions. The next day, Yu Huicheng's perverted hobby spread like wildfire. The female players of Yu Huicheng felt threatened and fled to other major cities. It was the day that the highest number of female players of Yu Huicheng had ever been lost. It was known in history as the afterglow of perversion, afterglow. Of course, this was a story that happened in the future. Let's not talk about it. The people of Qianjin were very confident in Wang Yu's work. Everyone had been waiting for a long time in the mayor's mansion. When the Assassin King's Guild players saw their boss, Traceless, being dragged through the gates like a dead dog, everyone was in despair. Wang Yu casually threw Wu Hengxi at the feet of the Assassin Kings Association. He then said to Wu Hengxi, "If you're willing to bet, you're willing to pay the price. Now that I've captured you, can you return the seal to me?" "Oomph." Traceless said stubbornly, "I'm a woman. Didn't your mother tell you that you can't trust a woman's words?" The drop rate of players in Rebirth wasn't high, and the drop rate of precious items was even lower. Traceless didn't believe that Wang Yu would be able to force the seal to drop if he didn't hand it over. At most, he would just stay safe after he died. Wang Yu hated people who didn't keep their words. Seeing that Traceless was a martial artist, but he didn't seem to care about it, his face darkened. "Do you think I won't be able to do anything if you don't return it? What? Can you still search my body?" Traceless asked with a look of a troublemaker. Chapter 1386. The pockets of players in the game were not as easy as they were in real life. If the person did not agree, no matter how good you were, you did not have the authority to search through other people's pockets. One had to admit that Wu Hengxi's plan was quite good. She thought that if she continued to be stubborn, Wang Yu would not be able to do anything to her. However, hearing Wu Hengxi's words, the Qianjin members burst into laughter. Seeing the perverted smiles on the faces of the Qianjin members, Wu Hengxi was dumbfounded. At that moment, Wang Yu said, "Old Shui, show him what you're made of." "Don't mention it." Mingji and Daoxue chuckled and came in front of Wu Hengxi. He glanced at Wu Hengxi and casually patted the chest of the giant god of southern heaven beside Wu Hengxi. The Assassin King's Guild members were shocked. They thought to themselves, "Damn it, do these bastards from Qianjin have that kind of hobby?" Whoosh! Just as the Assassin King's Guild was in a pinch, the giant god of southern heaven felt a chill on his body. When he lowered his head, he realized that his clothes had disappeared. At that moment, Mingji and Daoxue said excitedly, "Cloak of Concealment, and it's a gold-grade equipment." The Assassin King's Guild members looked in the direction of the voice and saw Mingji and Daoxue displaying the attributes of a piece of clothing in his hand. Although the Qianjin members were perverted, they still had a bottom line. Mingji and Daoxue would not even do something like molesting a woman in the game. Besides, female players were protected by the system in the game. If Mingji and Daoxue really touched Wu Hengxi, his attitude would probably change immediately. Mingji and Daoxue touching the giant god of southern heaven was to make an example out of Wu Hengxi, so that Wu Hengxi would back off. To be honest, Mingji and Daoxue's trick was quite useful. Seeing this, the Assassin King's Guild members could not help but feel their scalps go numb. Cold sweat flowed down their necks. I don't think I need to explain the significance of equipment to the players. Most players would struggle in the game for their entire lives, and most of them would fight for their equipment. In the long history of the game, Countless players had given up on the game in a fit of rage after losing their equipment and their accounts. This showed just how important equipment was to players. Hence, most of the time, players would rather die a few times than have their equipment stolen. After all, equipment was a fixed asset. As long as they had it, they could make a comeback at any time. In comparison, things like levels, which could be easily leveled up, were not worth mentioning. However, the fact that Ming Jian Daoxue had ripped off the South Heaven giant god's clothes with a single stretch of his hand was enough to intimidate the people of the King Assassin Association. What the F***CK? This was the kind of account stealing dog in online games, and the kind that was verified by the system. Facing such a person, everyone felt as if they had entered a thief's lair with money. They did not feel safe at all. Mingjian Daoxue was very satisfied with the Assassins Association's reaction. He smiled and turned around to threaten Traceless. How is it? Boss Wu Henzi, are you going to hand over the seal now? Or do you want me to strip you naked? Traceless did not speak, but the terrified expression on his face betrayed him. As Traceless was about to compromise, the South Heaven giant god yelled, Boss, don't be afraid. You're a woman, and you're protected by the system. He won't dare to touch you. This little shorty, he's not smart when he should be, but he's quite talkative when he shouldn't be. The South Heaven giant god's words immediately reminded Traceless. Humph! Traceless harumphed coldly and glared at Mingjian Daoxue. He said shamelessly, Touch me if you dare. F***K me. Mingjian Daoxue was utterly defeated. The people of Chuanjin were not afraid of the soft or the hard, but they were afraid of this kind of troublemaker. I can't kill or rob this woman. Do I really have to waste my time with her? As Mingjian Daoxue was feeling gloomy, Wu Ji said with a smile, Boss Traceless is right. We won't dare to strip you naked. Humph! Traceless twisted his head disdainfully. Following this, Wu Ji added, As for the others, we can still strip them. Let me think, 14 of them. That's 14 sets of equipment. That's worth quite a lot of money. I wonder if it's enough to trade for a City Lord seal. Traceless' expression changed tremendously after hearing Wu Ji's words. It could be said that Wu Ji was good at manipulating people's minds. With just a few words, Wu Ji had managed to pinpoint Traceless' Achilles' heel. This woman was not amenable to soft or hard tactics. She only cared about money. If he wanted to negotiate with her, he would have to offer something of sufficient value. The people of the Assassin Kings Guild were all experts. Their equipment was not weak at all. The 14 sets of equipment and the items in their bags could easily be sold for a few 100,000 gold coins. Using these things to negotiate terms with Wu Hensi would have to weigh the pros and cons, leaving the value of the equipment aside. If Traceless really threw away the equipment of his men just for a seal, the Assassin Kings Guild would cease to exist after today. Who the hell would want to follow such a boss? Wu Ji's words were a ruthless blow to Traceless' confidence. Traceless' heart was filled with conflicting emotions. Hand over the seal? Traceless was a person who valued his reputation. It would be too humiliating to hand it over just like that. Refuse to hand over the seal? Then he would be deserted by his own men. While Traceless was hesitating, Wang Yu pointed at the guard and said, You don't have to hesitate. Even if you don't hand it over, I have the ability to do so. Trust me, the safe zone in Yu Huicheng is useless against me. Traceless' heart skipped a beat when he heard Wang Yu's words. Indeed, Wang Yu is the castellan of Yu Huicheng. In this place, Wang Yu held absolute authority. He would definitely do what he said he would do if he killed someone in the safe zone. At this moment, Traceless knew what to do. Fine. This time, the Assassin Kings Guild will admit defeat. Traceless raised his head and glanced at Wang Yu, then mumbled with extreme dissatisfaction. He took out the seal and handed it to Wang Yu. Wang Yu took the seal and carefully looked at its attributes. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he threw it into his backpack. Then, Wang Yu lowered his head and said to Traceless, All right, you've returned the seal. Since you're a fellow martial artist, I'll let go this time. You may leave. After saying that, Wang Yu waved at the guards and opened the city gate again. The guards received the order and casually threw the giant god of southern heaven and the others to the ground. If it were someone else, with Chuanjin's temper, he would have beaten them half to death. However, Traceless was a martial artist. In this era, martial artists were a vulnerable group that huddled together for warmth. One you had experienced the hardships of life. One you could not bear to kill Traceless. Moreover, the Assassin Kings Guild had paid 150,000 gold coins for this trip. It was a well-deserved lesson. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.